Okay, so here we are. Finally, we've got some. What's up? What's up, brother? Sorry about the mistake. I had some troubles with the stream, but now finally, after so long, I'm able to stream. Hopefully, without any issues. But I don't know. I can never promise that. Streaming is actually pretty hard, and like it demands a lot of equipment. But what's up? Hello, Julia Reyes. How are you doing? Oirat, of course, my man, here with us tonight. Happy New Year, bro. Happy New Year to you too. Let's go, AC. Hello, brother. So you guys are not right here, so let me just do that. Let me do that real quick here. I think I can do it. Here. All right, finally. All right, finally. All right, finally. There we go. All right, finally. All right, now we can go. Now we are pretty much ready for the stream. Oh God, it feels good. You know, it feels good. It's been a while that I've done a stream or done a stream without any issues, because later, you know, the past few streams always had some sort of issues. So now this one hopefully will be issue free, you know, free of any issues. But how are you guys doing? We can do pretty much any reaction that we want. I really didn't had much planned as of right now, so we can pretty much just go with the flow or react to something, you know. H0ser uploaded a new video on Zimbabwe. I think I want to watch that. We can also do real life lore. He's uploaded a couple few videos that I haven't watched. What do you guys think? I didn't even have time to change the thumbnail, you know? H0ser, yeah, let's do H0ser first. I like how you think, man.
In this video.
Oh. Okay. Did we do the UK already? I don't think so. I don't think we did the UK economy already. Did he? Oh, no, I think we did. How will the UK survive without Europe? Are you talking about that? Yo, Tarkuf, what's up, dude? Yo, the whole gang is getting together, huh? Sorry, guys, I'm eating, by the way. It's like healthy stuff. I'm also so happy that finally we could stream. Yeah, we can watch that one. I don't know if we've done it already, but let's do the UK first, and then let's do the USA.
What is the future of the United Kingdom? The country has been so chaotic recently with political woes and the economy in the rubbish, as they would say. Will the UK keep the U in the K, and why are they going through this? First things first, the UK is an island, bruv. Well, I guess Great Britain is an island consisting of the three main pals,
I love the
England,
British,
Scotland, and Wales, and then Northern Ireland sits out here staring.
Oh, yeah, I think we've watched this one already. I know, I remember because it's a little hedgehog, like England is a hedgehog. I think we've done this. Let me check on my channel. I don't even know what videos I have recorded. Well, no. We haven't watched this. All right, let's do it. I think so too. Maybe in a stream. Maybe we've watched it on a stream, you know? But let's watch it again. You know, I really don't mind.
Off into the
The UK is very chaotic
There's
lately.
been some pull from these three outer countries, but let's be honest.
Yeah, look at Ireland and all the
keeps them in
issues.
line easily. It's just
It's
the
so
largest,
cute, dude.
most
I love
populated, and
hedgehogs.
richest of the bunch. Let's get back to that island part, though.
Yeah, maybe we can
this
watch that
waterway,
too.
This separated the UK from being a
The
poor
channel?
backwater, kind of like Lithuania, to being the power. Like, the power. I mean, the power on Earth
The
for a
freaking
while.
power, yeah.
Water means fast movement, water means trade, and water means blockading other nations. Britain controls the water. This wasn't really always so. The wind kind of made them lucky in this war, but after that they promised they would always have the strongest navy in Europe. This is what made the UK. It wasn't the Scots threatening to get drunk and invade England, not the English starving the Irish, not the Welsh just chilling here. It was the English Channel who separated them from Europe. Cause let's be honest, the actual land here is not that magical. Sure, the UK is temperate, it's a good start, but the food growing capability isn't great.
France is the best.
Rivers,
All right, I
particularly
like
the
that.
Thames, Severn, and Firth of Forth to develop inland. There's the Tees X line, which separates the lowlands from highlands, also separating farming.
Okay,
from
we're learning some
separatism
UK
and normal
geography.
sounding
I had
English
no
from-
clue.
I mean, this is the thing. It's all right when your eyes are
I remember this because I used this exact same clip in like one of my videos. So yeah, I know, pretty funny.
And then there's the hard work they put in to make their waterway map look like this,
Nobody can
which
understand
helped a ton,
Scotland,
but
you
if
know?
they never realized how important naval power was, they wouldn't have dug the canals in the
Jesse,
first place.
we need to dig.
It's the reason why Britain was the first place to have
I love
these
Breaking
towers
Bad.
puffing that exotic pack. They were the first to industrialize because of the water. First of all, they had a ton of traders, manufacturers, and businessmen who decided they wanted some sort of power in the country, you know, to keep the tea and slaves moving. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
ended up with things like the Magna Carta, Glorious Revolution, and the world's first constitutional monarchy in power, with parliament originally made for the rich people to give their opinions on running the country. Still not really great for the average bloke, but it was better than an absolute monarch taking all of your bread and maidens. Parliament was just better for business, which led to industrialization. The UK is just the right spot to spawn this new technology. There is so much water to move stuff around, the rich parliament let the industrialists keep their money and protected their business rights. In fact, they usually were the industrialists, and those French bastards couldn't just attack the place whenever they wanted to. It was perfect, and it made the island by far the richest place on Earth. At least at the time. But while they were going through their change, they were doing it pretty much
That's true.
alone. They had to figure out how to industrialize by themselves. You know, how do you get the steam
Sigma,
to move the wheel?
Lone
How do you
Wolf,
get the
the
wheel to
Sigma
shred the
grind
cotton?
set.
How do you get this hat even taller? It took the nation about 7 generations to industrialize. For you Gen Z kids, 7 generations ago was the generation before the lost generation.
That's
the
a
ones
lot of
born around
kids.
1860. So because it took such a long time, the birth rates never catastrophically fell, or at least not nearly as fast as other countries is.
I mean, France, Normandy invaded the Anglo-Saxon and they won. So yeah, I mean, we could talk about stuff like this a lot, but it's debatable, I think. A lot of the birth rates lately have been pretty crazy, especially like surrounding China. Have you guys been seeing what's been going on in China recently. Just crazy, like COVID protests and things are not going well. I mean, it's really like breaking down, and the UK is also not doing very well.
They had time to adjust from the farm to
Now
the factory.
the birth rates,
and well, the extra
yeah, the
people
German
just
birth
shipped them
rate
off across
stats,
the
yeah.
empire. So birth rates kept high. So fast forward to today, and because of that surplus population making the map turn to this, now the colonies can come back to Britain being able to speak English now. The British demographic structure is stable and actually growing, particularly from immigrants who can mend into British society much better than some other European states have. I guess that's what happens when you mend British society into them first, huh? Compare this to other European countries, Germany, Italy, Russia, Spain, who maybe industrialized a little too fast and collapsed their birth rate by urbanizing too fast, which meant that their demographic structures are like this, aka
talking about Germany, there we go. A lot of people age 50 to 60. Now we have like a bit. I love how you can see that surplus of women in like the World War II generation, and then you have like a surplus of dudes, of male.
about to die soon. So this is all
Well,
to say that the
not
land
soon,
and people
not
of the
so
UK
soon,
mean
but-
that the country, despite all the drama, all the booing in Parliament, and all the awful food, it's a stable nation. They're not going to collapse, and they're not going to be involved in a potential European collapse. That's not to say they don't have problems. I mean, look at their economy. It's unstable as shite. They need to make a safe, modern place to keep their money stable. Wait, that reminds me. I'm supposed to tell you about Ridge Wallet. The Ridge Wallet is, well, safe, modern, slick, cheeky, durable,
We have to
and
watch
a seriously
this.
great
Sorry.
place to keep your cash and cards. The key case is a great way to keep your keys in one spot, and I love how sleek it is. If you turn it to the side, you might not be able to even see it. And it can carry all the racks I need to keep around. Each wallet will last you a lifetime. Plus, if you don't love it within 45 days, just send it back. Full refund provided. Go to ridge.com/hoser to save up to 40% on your brand new wallet. That's ridge.com/hoser. Now, how is the actual British economy doing? Because the UK is an island, they love to go on and on about how different and special they are from the rest of Europe. You know, they love to sail the seas. They use the pound, not the euro. They're cool with the Americans, and they hate the Polish. Well, I guess that's typical across the continent. But really, they're nothing but a European.
Yeah, why do the British hate the Polish? I mean, what's wrong with the Polish? I don't know. I think Germany has the second lowest birth rate in the world. Only Japan is lower. Bro, all right. I think you might be right. 1.5. Ooh, that's so low. Immigrants, something like that? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, look at that. 1.5. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's 1.5 births per woman in 2020. Japan has 1.3. Holy shit. Holy shit. Japan has 1.3. That's low. But we do have a decent amount of immigration. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a lot better. Japan, I don't think Japan has a lot of immigration. Germany has. France is looking good, quote unquote, at 1.8. But 1.3, look at Korea. Yeah, let's look at Korea. Yo! No way! No shot! 0.8. I don't think I've ever seen a 0.84 birth rate. Holy shit. South Korea, yeah, it's pretty bad. Hello, Fritos. Germany has like twice to 4 times the immigration rate of Japan, so they're doing much better. Kim is laughing in the back. Yeah, the Polish are leaving for other countries. Look up Taiwan's. Oh my God, is it gonna be lower? I don't think so. Yeah. It's close to 1.2 according to macro trends. 1.1. It actually went up a little bit. Yeah, it's been going up in recent years, so I guess that's good. I remember when somebody said the Poles are like the Mexicans of Europe when we watched this last time. I remember this too. Yeah, the Polish are like the Mexicans of Europe. I get it. They're immigrants.
And any trouble Europe is
I
having
mean,
with
that's
their
true.
economy, the Brits will follow. This could be from supply shocks, their rapidly aging population, European banks giving out bad loans to shite borrowers, or whole nations not paying their debt back. Whatever it is, the UK will be affected by it. I mean, half of their imports, exports, and investments come from the mainland. It'll hit them eventually.
Yeah,
and
the
hit
West
them
really
it
needs
has.
migrants.
Look at the British economy recently. The Queen would be shaking her head. Oh, not her. This queen, considering how far the British economy
Victoria,
has fallen from the
Queen
best
Victoria.
in the world to top 6, it's appalling to a Victorian.
Hello, Golden
especially
Toaster.
in recent years.
You can
Real
chat
wage
now.
in the UK
Are you
is lower
working
now
or
than
like
it was
in
15
school?
years ago. Plus, Europe takes longer to bounce back from financial crises. Some places still not
Well,
really
we're
recovering
we're
from
gonna watch it.
2008. And because the UK was the
Giga
first to
Chan.
industrialize, they were the first to move past that, and instead of focusing on dirty manufacturing, they started to focus on high-end, luxury suit wearing, cocaine-driven finance, especially in London, moving their rural factories to cheap China, or more fashionable nowadays, even cheaper India. But remove London and you're left with one of the poorest nations in Western Europe, one a shell of its former self. This hollowness directly contributed to something which has dominated British foreign politics, domestic politics, even household politics. It has been the only thing the UK has been focused on for the last 7 years. Brexit. The country lost.
Yeah, basically, when we had Thomas, yeah, I don't know about this. Yeah, I don't know either. Like, one of the poorest countries in Europe? I don't think so. Of course, he's referring to outside London, so all the rural England areas. I don't think it's one of the poorest. I mean, even like Birmingham, I don't think it's like that bad. I mean, like worse than places like Poland, for example, right? I don't think so.
Its investments, it lost its trade deals, and it lost much of its immigrant flow over the past half decade from the biggest chaos it's been in recently. There was no proper plan made for Brexit. It was kind of just an impulse decision the country made without really thinking it through. You can make a new video just listing all the economic damages Brexit caused, but we can say some here. Imports fell, and as an island who needs imported goods, that's a pisser. Banks transferred over $1 trillion of assets outside of the UK, going to the EU, or more realistically, over to the US. The Brexit deals have been the center of British politics for the last few years, and honestly, it's going to be pretty hard to make a cohesive trade deal with the bureaucracy-loving European Union, who took decades to make one with even Canada, which is a real bell end for the UK, who, dependent on imports, has been hit pretty hard by supply shocks, causing some of the highest inflation in the Western world and the highest in the country in decades. And then there's the political chaos. Oh boy, if you aren't aware of who this is, here's basically what she did. She became the prime minister after Boris resigned. The queen hated her so much that she instantly died. Her mini budget crashed the economy by scaring every investor in Britain, almost sending the pound down to dollar or euro level, and then she left. Basically throwing themselves into Brexit with no deal has
Jesus
left the British
Christ.
a crisis they need to deal with still for years to come. So how will modern Britain survive going into the world solo without its EU daddy and without their best buddies, France and Germany? Long story short, they won't. First of all, when it comes to security, Britain is one of the most globalized countries on earth, having a pretty high rate of importing and exporting. It's almost like they used to have a third of the world to pull resources from.
I know, right? Yeah,
Second,
they used
they
to.
could kick it with the Scandinavians. They're not really into the EU too much either, at least Norway isn't, but they have proper navies, great demographics, and most importantly are linked to the UK energy-wise already. From these fans
Yeah,
in the
that's
middle
actually
of the
really
ocean,
true. I mean, I don't know how close. Probably the UK has very close relation to those countries in Scandinavia, but I think they could get even closer. I'm wondering how's the demographics of Scandinavia. Let's see. Okay, well, they are not so great. Sweden is at 1.6 and Norway is at 1.4, which I think it's worse than the UK. So I don't know if that's good, man. I don't know. Let's see, Denmark. But I don't think it's gonna be like 1.6 also. Greenland is at 2.0. I mean, Greenland is killing it, man. People in Greenland, they're having a bunch of babies.
And undersea pipelines pumping Norwegian oil, Britain and Scandinavia already share their electricity. They can make a mini bubble of influence in the North Sea, which just so happens to be Europe's most important trade route. Thirdly, the English aren't alone. They are bringing the Scots, Welsh, and Northern Irish with them whether they like it or not, and the Welsh happen to like it. How will their relationship be after years of a bumpy road ahead? Who knows? But if Scotland were to split off because of Scotland forever, they would definitely be making a mistake. First of all, they have no people and the land looks like this.
Angola, all right, let's do it. Oh my God, 5.3. Holy shit. Wow. Yo, 5.3, that's a lot. 5 children per woman. Namibia 3.5, Mozambique 4.7. Jesus fuck. The Brits don't hate the Polish. That's the biggest life I've ever had. We just don't have enough houses for them all. Oh, all right. So yeah, it's like an immigration thing. Wow. Wow.
Take the UK's dependence on the EU and foreign imports and multiply it by at least 3. I don't know.
Mali. All right. Oh my God, it's gonna be more. It can be more, dude. Oh, 6 birds per woman. Holy shit, people in Mali, what are you doing? Nigeria moment. Okay, let's go for Nigeria. 5.3. Niger 6.8. Oh, no way. 6.9, almost 7 people. Amish people will be like 6 kids. That's cute. I mean, yeah. That's why in the US, places like Utah have like a higher birth rate. Scandinavia's population will increase about 20-30% by 2100. I guess that's mostly because of immigration, right? Back in the day, women used to have like 15 kids, but 2/3 of them died before age 10. Yeah, good to see you, Gustav. And yeah, it's fucking insane. Chat. That's not a chat move at all. Look at that. 6.3. Wow. If Nigeria can remain stable, it'll have 500 to 750 million people by the end of the century. That's crazy to think, isn't it?
They would be at the mercy of Europe and England too, and I'm assuming if they split off, that relationship would not be the best. Second, Scotland is already older than England and growing at a much slower pace, so demographic collapse would be first in Scotland, especially if they reduce their main source of immigrants, the English. Third, navally, it can't get anywhere without strict
a natality collapse all over the world. Well, clearly not in Africa, though.
permission from the second most powerful navy on Earth right below them. And fourth, it would be so financially connected to England that honestly, what would be the point of independence? Just to eat stuff like this without a chav in their ear going on and on about Man United not scoring enough goals? Just stick with the UK, Scotland. It's best for both you and England.
Also, literally Chad. Yeah,
honestly,
Africa's
if there's
Chad.
a financial crisis in the UK and Ireland keeps up its growth, which surpassed then doubled the UK in GDP per capita.
Yeah, doubled. Ireland has doubled
in the UK,
the
and
UK
Ireland keeps up its growth,
per capita.
which surpassed.
Look at that. Wow. Ireland's growth has been insane. They doubled the UK GDP per capita. I mean, Ireland, talk about a real Chad. Rare Irish W. Yeah, I mean, W for sure. Although rare, yeah, it is kind of rare, yeah.
Then doubled the UK
Revenge
GDP
of the
per
potato.
capita, it might not be such a bad idea to leave and go join the winning side instead. Unlike Scotland,
Yeah,
they'll get a
not
free
at all.
and quick pass into the EU through Ireland, and relations between Ireland and the UK, despite the hungry past, are pretty good.
Hungry
so I
past.
don't think there will
Hungry
be too
potato
much bad
past.
blood. But hey, Ireland is still dependent on the UK for energy, food,
5.6
manufacturing
million by
slash labor,
2050.
and
Huh.
protection. So Northern Ireland wouldn't be changing too much by switching sides. And then there's the whole of the United Kingdom. What should they do in an EU-less world? Well, they already know the answer. Boris said it when he left office.
Number one, stay close to the Americans. Number one, stay close to the Americans.
Yeah.
The British have a rough history with the Americans, but let's be honest, who don't they have a rough history with?
Ireland's GDP is insanely inflated because international concerns have their EU headquarters there. Oh, for tax reasons. Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make sense.
But despite that, they're probably Britain's biggest ally. Why not make them their biggest trade partner if Europe gives them the cold shoulder? The US can fulfill the UK's agriculture and manufacturing needs, or
Yes.
the integrated NAFTA can, likely with some heavy lifting from Mexico.
Arriba!
They already have
Yes,
high
sir.
economic, political, and cultural ties. They even have the same show about the same culture. But the US has more naval power than the rest of the world combined.
Yeah.
So Britain can't really contribute much to that front, but they can still follow them around like a little kid. They do have that capability to at least reach
It's a
everywhere
little humiliating for the UK, you know, being America's sort of child. But
on Earth.
Hey,
So to stick with the Americans,
work-
they'll
if it
follow
works,
them
it
around.
works.
Need to potentially defend Taiwan, the UK will be there. Need to bomb more Middle Eastern schools? Yes,
the
the
UK
will
is
be there
right
too.
there.
There's also the idea of Kanzuk, an alliance and free movement between the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But this would only realistically happen if the US allows it to. Canada is way too
Yeah.
integrated into the US economy for them not to have
I don't
a
know
seat
what's
in the
that. You know
negotiating
what
room.
what's
So
that
the
supposed to
message
mean?
after
But
Brexit is clear. Instead of rocking with the Europeans, rock with the Americans instead. There will still be some hiccups called huge
people say that the American army is like a paper army. I don't. Why did he choose the Bison for the US though? The bald eagle would have been better. A lot more patriotic, for sure. Kansuk, the only thing that can save us in the UK, well, I think, you know, staying close to the Americans would probably do one. Well, maybe not wonders, but you know, like you know what I'm saying, right? That would do
recessions
good.
and political
Yeah, how they use the army, a paper army. Yeah, I don't see it. They spend so much money on it. Yeah, literally. I mean, most than like the other 10 countries combined.
chaos, but long term they should be fine with good
Good
demographics
old
and
blokes.
security. Time to figure out what Brexit really means.
Oh man, talk about Brexit, dude. Oh, one of the worst policy ideas probably in history. I mean, what do you guys think? Brexit was so bad. I mean, it's being so bad. I don't see how is it a benefit to the UK at all. If there's only one criticism I have of the US Army, they haven't had a larger war since World War II, which should be a good thing. I think that's a good thing, you know, not having another war. Vietnam, but Vietnam wasn't that big though. Korea was kind of, yeah. The US has the highest budget and third largest by personnel. It's insane. It's crazy. I mean, larger war with a near peer enemy. I think that's a good thing, you know?
What is the future of the United Kingdom?
Subscribe for a free pass to the European Union. Subscribe for a free pass into the EU. That's funny though. They just did a bad decision after Brexit. Brexit is, as such, is great. What are you saying, Fritos? Do you want the French exit? You know, a Frexit? In the 90s, Iraq's army was the 6th largest in the world. Oh, shit. Do you think it's possible you can watch H0ser's video on the unpredictable future of Italy? Yeah, absolutely. Let this be almost a H0ser stream, you know? Let's watch the new one on Zimbabwe and then let's watch the one about Italy, right? Let's do that. Should watch his announcement. 4 reasons nobody's joining the military. Really good video. Oh. Let's watch the announcement. Yeah, fuck it. Let's watch the announcement first. and then we can see the one about the army.
Hey guys, I just wanted to give you a quick update on where this channel is and where it's going. A cut! Ever since the dawn of time, H0ser kind has always held a 0 as a point of
What's a H0ser? I mean, is it like a beaver? He does have like a beaver on his logo, but what's a H0ser?
pride.
Some kind of beaver?
A
Yeah.
concept of emptiness. We wear it proudly. Somethingness from nothingness. We are a 0 people. We have always been a 0 people. Don't stray too far beyond the 0, lest you find yourself trapped in the woods, lost.
It's a Canadian term. Oh, hose.
Until now.
Zero.
Zero.
What's this?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah, buddy.
I am in it. Were you the French guy who said like zero? Dude, no way, man. I think people make a big deal of the politics of Italy without talking about its underperforming economy, the French. We, black shirt. All right, let's... Bro, that's huge, man. There we go. Hey, my man. There we go. Dude, let's fucking go, man. You were in a H0ser video. That's badass, dude. Kind of jealous about it. That's cool, man. Good video. That's amazing.
Zero. Yeah, buddy.
Was it like a subscriber thing? I don't... French win once again. W. El Chapo Jimenez is going
Ladies
far.
and
Absolutely,
gentlemen,
man.
Boys and girls, H0sers and H0sers, it's time to break the mold.
We're all
Welcome
H0sers.
to H0ser with an O.
H0ser with an O?
Won't you remember all the memories? Remember all the memories.
Argentina, yeah, Argentina won the World Cup. And there was a guy with like a shirt. What's... I don't...
All the memories we had together. By the way, most of you already refer to me as H0ser with an O, so you'll just fine.
Oh. Oh, that's true though. Yeah.
Venezuela.
He already changed the channel name. If you see the channel name, I didn't realize it, but yeah, it's no longer with a 0. It's already H0ser. Holy shit. 4 reasons. Yeah, we're gonna watch that as silky smooth voice. Who's H0ser? Yeah, next year H0ser with a capital H. Yeah, we'll watch the military video in a few after the Zimbabwe and Italy videos. But let's see these ones first. Next year, yeah, H0ser.
Video, I'm going to be giving away $10 trillion to a random subscriber. Zimbabwe dollars, baby.
Yeah, one of the craziest inflation rates. Oh my god, there's really a lot of failed nations in the world. But I guess it could be worse. I mean, we could all be Zimbabwe. We watched Italy though. Oh, we did? Yeah, I think so, right? We've watched a lot of these H0ser videos.
We are not gay.
We are not gay.
First,
Bro,
let's look at
imagine
modern Zimbabwe. Sitting in the
Venezuela,
rump of
yeah,
Africa,
Zimbabwe
is made up
roasted.
of these borders and sitting at a population of about 15 million on this rather boring piece of land. The nation does not produce a whole lot of anything. How do they make their money then? For 2/3 of the country, they don't really. They just farm, usually at the sustenance level. That means they're self-sufficient, right?
not.
No nation is really self-sufficient, not even you. So the rest of the nation can trade to make up that difference. But wait, Zimbabwe is a landlocked nation. They need to get through both South Africa and Mozambique through these rivers in order to ship their goods off. That is unless they move it by train, still needing to rely on these two countries plus Zambia or Botswana now. And African borders are notorious for corruption, and usually a little extra side cash is given to the officer.
Congo Church be like, yeah, man.
Just think of it as a tariff. This all leads to Zimbabwe having one of the lowest
At
rates
least
of
it's
trading per
beautiful,
capita
yeah,
on
at
Earth,
least
and
you could
as you'll
say
see
it
later,
is.
They didn't keep great relations with any of their neighbors. Although if you included smuggling in their trade, the answer would be a lot higher. What could they possibly be smuggling? Marijuana? Meth? Heroin?
Yeah,
nah,
what?
more like flour, gold, and just a dash of cocaine. You might have
Okay,
heard,
well, I mean,
Zimbabwe is one of the largest
not
gold
like
producers
Mali.
on Earth. I mean, it makes up
Yeah,
half their
Mali is
exports.
all of
course
this
it produces
plus,
a ton
like,
of it,
really
but
ugly.
no, the gold production is
Just like a
relatively
piece of
small, with
desert,
only
you
about
know?
30 tons produced a year. That's about the weight of a humpback whale, or a dead humpback whale, because they don't have any oceans in Zimbabwe. Real great exports, huh? What they do have instead is platinum, chromium, and some lithium. Mining is Zimbabwe's big thing. It's the whole reason it was colonized in the first place. Pretty much every other industry is too uncompetitive.
Oh shit, that's true though. We have a new KRAUT video. Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely
Zimbabwe
react to
fight
it.
even its neighbors in. So they export things like gold, diamonds, nickel, and some tobacco for good luck, and import things like everything. At least everything you need for a modern country.
Yeah.
Food, energy, chemicals, vehicles, clothes, industrial supplies. I don't want to go on, especially since they still barely import anything. This low level of trade makes them so vulnerable to swings in the domestic market.
Jesus
which means if
Christ.
times are good, they're pretty good. And if times are bad, they get worse than most other nations do. They can't minimize any shocks with outside trade. Let's get to the blunders then. First mistake, these guys.
Mugabe wasn't that bad. He made everyone trillionaires. Technically true. He could say that. Not gonna lie, KRAUT climbing in my favorite channel list. But climbing up or climbing down?
Look how friendly they are. Just imagine being posted up with the boys in a foreign
Rhodesia,
land.
yeah.
Only one issue. There are still these fellas living here, the Ndebele. So by the 1880s, there was an old African standoff. This is basically how it went. The British said, I want this land.
Okay,
Then the
awesome.
Portuguese
Yeah,
came in
it's
and
pretty
said,
good.
I want this land. Then the Boers came too and said, I want this land. And the Ndebele said, what the hell? This is my land. So the British told the king they'd give him guns and money if they could mine on the land. And after some thinking and debating,
Just wanna
he
mine,
said,
lol.
you know what? Screw it. What's the worst that could happen?
The British Empire then took over the entire kingdom in a series of wars that
Except
killed
the British didn't actually
tens
own
of
this
thousands.
land. One guy named Cecil Rhodes did, and they didn't believe in him.
God did.
Because now all of this land is called Rhodesia, and he's ruling with his divine right to take all the gold from his land. The
Hello,
mining
famous
operations
last
actually
word.
failed at first, but they still set up some farms to tax food. Rhodesia was a couple of things. It was segregated, it was unequal, and it got a little more racist than the average late-night gaming talk. The whites ruled the economy, ruled the country, and ruled the land, seizing it from the native Africans, forcing most of them to live on reserves.
I mean, probably like one of the most segregated and racist countries that has like ever existed. Can you really think about a country that's like worse race-wise?
Only one problem though. Unlike these countries where the Brits came in such large numbers they dominated the country, the Brits were the vast minority in Rhodesia. About 50,000 around the 1930s
like
compared
very
to
few.
African numbers
Very,
in
very
the
few.
millions, leading to a country where a tiny fraction owned most of the farms, mines, businesses, land, and dollar bills. If you want to act like a pretentious political scientist, you could say Rhodesia was an exemplary case of extractive political and economic institutions set about by an external force for their ad interim growth. Or instead, you could say
Wait,
the Brits by
what?
an external.
How could you tell? Yes, I read Why Nations Fail. I'm actually listening to the audiobook. Your life has the wrong thumbnail. Yeah, I didn't have time to make a new thumbnail, honestly. You know, in Asia, yeah, there could be. Rhodesia had really good music, unfortunately. I've never heard Rhodesian music, but I believe you, man.
Force for their ad interim growth. Or instead,
Japanese
you could say the Brits took all the nobility's things to
I mean, maybe like Japan, World War II, like World War II Japan was probably like, yeah, definitely more racist. But now, do you think like now Germany in the 1940s? Yeah, when I said World War II, instantly Germany came to my mind. China with the Uyghur, I mean, yes, they're pretty racist, but is it more than like Rhodesia? Well, maybe, you know what?
Whether
Yeah.
from heavy taxes placed on native production, HUD taxes on every house, or marketing boards set up
HUD
who usually took a little
taxes.
bonus for their hard work,
They taxed
Rhodesia
HUDs,
was more
bro.
unequal than a Nike sweatshop in Bangladesh. And as World War II started, causing hundreds of thousands of natives to move to the cities for fancy new manufacturing jobs, tensions only rose between the two groups. The 1950s and 60s saw a rise of militant anti-government groups like the ZAPU and the NDP. This NDP, not the Canadian one. As the groups grew and people kept urbanizing, there were open calls to get rid of the Rhodesian system. And when Nyasaland declared independence in the 60s, and then Northern Rhodesia did too, both under African rule, the South wanted to join the party and declared independence
Northern
from the UK
Rhodesia.
in 1965, instead under a white minority rule. It was inevitable. The British Empire was seriously declining and the UK was
Okay, I didn't knew that Zambia was Northern Rhodesia, but I guess it makes some sort of sense. Somewhat about being racist, more about the security threat. Basically, how the U.S. interned the Japanese. Yeah, I get that. Also, a lot of oil and trade routes through Xinjiang. And bro, for real, medieval Europe is like constant racist against other kingdoms. Okay, yeah, well, yeah.
distancing itself.
There's
from
definitely been a lot of
but
racist
right after, boom,
countries.
The Rhodesian Bush War started and lasted for 15 years. No, not that kind of Bush War. It was the Rhodesians versus the Zimbabweans, aka whites versus blacks.
Ooh.
It obviously caused destruction,
Jesus
countless
Christ.
deaths, and embargoes. So when the war was over, won by the ZANU-PF party, the new Zimbabwe was one of the most broken places on earth. Luckily, there was one man who promised to fix Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe.
Oh, the man who made everyone trillionaires.
The leader of ZANU-PF. Just kidding, guys. This man had no intention of
Oh yeah, the
making
Turks
Zimbabwe
against the
its own place.
Kurds. Yeah.
Right after
The
taking over,
Kurdish.
he killed about 20,000 political opponents and he got rid of the Rhodesian Senate. He was just a tiny bit corrupt, you know, setting up ZANU-PF
little
allies to
bit.
control newly made state-run industries, taking over marketing boards, and heavily regulating trade so you had to buy from his
Oh,
party.
okay. So not too long ago, the English were racist against the Celts. I didn't knew that. Against the Irish, like that made like I do knew that, but against the Celts,
One could
I
call him
didn't
a
knew that at
businessman
all.
doing business, but many others prefer the term crook. Instead of trying to get rid of these devastating
Americans
ideas,
too, oh
he
yeah.
wanted to be the man running them.
Americans against
obviously
Mexicans,
the old
you know.
British colonists ran the hell away from this new country, taking much of the money and educated population with them.
Yeah.
Some stayed. They still had farms, mines, and childhood memories here after all. Plus, any type of foreign investment that wanted to come back to Zimbabwe was shooed away. ZANU-PF wanted to fix the nation all by itself. So
yeah,
any
really bad idea. I didn't knew that they wanted to fix the nation by itself. I mean, they were isolationist, right? I didn't knew that Zimbabwe. I mean, it makes sense, but wow, really bad idea. Especially if you're a poor African nation. They should have learned from Botswana, who's like getting fairly rich or fairly wealthy. Seeing as they're all half Celtic, that don't make sense. Irish, maybe Celts. Alternate History Hub, I think, has a video on why the Irish were once hated in America. I would love to watch that. Please remind me, like, in after a few videos, and I would like to watch that. People forget that racism isn't always about skin color or nationality, but ideas. Nationality ideas. Yeah, that's true. That's true, though. It's not always about like skin
independent
color,
Zimbabwean
religion,
businessmen trying
right?
to start
Culture.
up a shop selling, I don't know, plastic lids, couldn't from the heavy subsidies given to ZANU-PF-led industries, high costs from the lack of imports, and repression for genuine fear of ZANU-PF power being questioned. By the 1990s, this economic system failed though. After the Soviets collapsed, it wasn't really cool to have a command-based economy anymore, so they accepted loans from these guys to start a journey to the free market. No, said the ZANU-PF supporters, who were the ones controlling all the state-led industries and getting a pretty nice paycheck for their work, so they protested, and unrest continued throughout the 1990s. During that whole time, there was an idea, a break in case of emergency type idea. What if you took all the land from the white farmers and gave it to black farmers?
Oh, yeah.
Nah, that's too crazy, and the debate died down. Until 1998, and Zimbabwe went to fight in the Second Congo War, mainly to protect Mugabe's investments in the country. Turns out that was an incredibly unpopular move, and countries cut their aid to Zimbabwe, they cut trade, they cut political ties, and most importantly, their old pals South Africa did all of this too. They were a pariah on the world stage, and it led to deindustrialization, riots over rising food prices, war veterans demanding land, and defaulting on their loans in 2000.
Defaulting on
The
their
2000 election in
loans.
Zimbabwe was one full of
Wow.
violence, fraud, and likely the most important in its history. ZANU-PF won by only a slight margin with a little help from some certain gunmen. So why not gain some popularity and maybe try that idea out?
Jesus Christ. Black Power Farm. Black Power Farm. That's insane, dog.
2000, the government started seizing white-owned land to give to the war veterans, but let's be honest, to ZANU-PF elites too. Over 3,000 of them in total, and I think this graph shows the state of the economy best. Before 2000, growing somewhat stable. After 2000, it really took a nosedive.
Literally.
Imagine you lived your whole life in the city, and then I grabbed you and threw you on this piece of land and said, "Farm, boy." What would you even do? My guess is you'd be a pretty lousy farmer, and yeah, with the lack of training and dismantling white equipment and
So they didn't even train the farmers. They didn't even teach them how to farm. Why would you give a city person a farm? I mean, at least the white farmers had an idea on how to farm, like they knew how to farm. Oh my God, Jesus. Zimbabwe is just... It's just a bunch of bad decision after bad decisions. Grow cocaine. I back this statement. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna be poor, at least be like cocaine poor.
These
You
new
know.
farmers destroyed agriculture.
Do Afghan
in
tactic.
Zimbabwe.
No food, just
supplies
opium.
halved, down 45% in the years that followed, and they couldn't just import the rest. Cause, say it together, everybody hates Zimbabwe. Remember, this is a country that already lost its trade and manufacturing. All they had left was farming, and that was collapsing now too. It's kind of like when Kanye lost his family, all he had left was Adidas, and then he became a Nazi.
Yeah, and he had to blow it up. Yeah,
Just
oh
replace
yeah.
This interview with seizing white farms, and that's the story of Zimbabwe. Businesses completely stopped investing in Zimbabwe when they realized the government could just snatch their investment from them and shut it down. Well, imagine this with farms and factories instead. And the US and EU put massive sanctions on Zimbabwe, with one of the goals seriously being to make the people revolt and overthrow the ZANU-PF government. Food became unaffordable, there was violence and riots in the streets, and the government ran out of money. The only way to pay the elites and veterans was to... No, don't look at that, Zimbabwe.
Print money.
You can do better.
Print money. Whoa, it's all coming full circle. Got this from Wiki. Development of the 19th century Anglo-Saxonism led to theories of English racial superiority. Jesus Christ. Okay. So it was all against the Celts. My comments are too long for YouTube. Yeah, I don't know. YouTube is weird with the comments. I miss the old Kanye. I do miss the old Kanye too. I was a huge Kanye fan, but now he went crazy and now he's yay. He's, it's just fuck. I hope this is in the future of South Africa. I hope that too. South Africa is a pretty nice country. As a German, do not print a lot of money when you are desperate. We have experienced that. I mean, even if some Anglo were racist against the Celts, this was not the majority. I mean, it's never the majority when it comes to racism.
Diamonds, drug smuggling, taxes, I don't care. Anything but that. Oh, but it's so tempting. Maybe just a little bit could do some good. 'Cause swoosh! The government became addicted to printing money. At peak printing in late 2008, inflation was around 80 billion% monthly, and
80 billion% monthly. 80 billion% monthly. 80 billion% monthly. Of course, as time went on, it got better. 80 billion% monthly, dude.
86 billion% yearly. But honestly, they stopped measuring. It was so high that everyone was just honestly making these stats up. They printed so much money that the paper it was printed on was way more valuable than the dollar itself, leading to things like the $10 trillion bill, and the hyperinflation wiped out everybody's savings, destroyed any business's savings, and obliterated the government's savings. The black market was the only realistic way to buy food, goods, and to find any work, with some bread reaching $20 billion in the non-black market. After the banks collapsed, they had to switch to other currencies like the South African rand and US dollar for any sort of stability. And if you think they learned from their mistakes, wrong. In 2013, these land-grabbing laws were extended to some white-owned businesses. You can imagine how that went. Today, less than 300 farms in Zimbabwe have been given back to white farmers, and in 2019 they brought back the Zimbabwean dollar, this time only reaching 350% inflation in 2021. So hey, kudos to them for improving. Food security is uncertain, life expectancy is low, and it's still very politically repressive. Not the best for running a country, but whether it's Brits taking African land or Zimbabweans taking white-owned land, what I can say is they knew a thing or two about how to run an economy. Of course they know how to run an economy. Which other country has had as many trillionaires as Zimbabwe has?
I mean, I don't know. There's no other countries that has that many trillionaires. Holy shit. Zimbabwe is really, I mean, it reminds me that the video that he made on the Congo and how chaotic the situation in the Congo is. Well, I think this is worse. I mean, I think this is genuinely worse than the video on the Congo, you know, and that's saying a lot. That really is saying a lot. Holy fuck. Very true, but some things are top down, mate. In the 19th century Britain, everything was top down. Let's do 4 reasons nobody's joining the military. 4 reasons nobody is joining the military. It does sound interesting, right? Okay, task and purpose. There we go, 4 months ago. So let's see. Oh my god, it's gonna be like woke.
The United States military is facing its worst recruitment numbers since
like
the end of the Vietnam
anti-woke
War, and it's causing major national security problems. Army recruiters were roughly 50% behind their goals this year. That would reduce their numbers by 40,000 troops over the next 2 years, which would be like losing 4 whole divisions on the battlefield. Where'd Bravo Company go? We need covering fire now. What do you mean they didn't
So
re-enlist?
40,000.
The American military is on its way to falling dangerously below the necessary troop strength of 1.3 million. This force number isn't random. It's carefully created based on the ambitious U.S. foreign policy goals of defending its borders, upholding international order, as well as promoting American interests abroad. Our current strategy is based around us being a superpower in Europe, the Middle East, and
yeah, but what does woke mean at this point? I don't know. I don't like the term woke because it's always used in a negative way or a negative manner, and you know, I think you guys know that I am fairly like I'm left leaning, you know, center left. So I don't know. I don't like the term woke. Don't worry, we'll have soldiers replaced by T-800 Terminators soon. I mean, have you guys heard about all the AI advances that have been made recently? Like, for example, ChatGPT. I mean, it's insane, some of the artificial intelligence going on lately. That I wake up in the morning.
and Asia Pacific. We've sized our military to be able to fight more than one conflict at a time in those regions.
Wow, more than
the Air Force
one
is 4,000
conflict at a
recruits
time.
behind their goal, and the Pentagon is an overall 15% behind. All of this calls into question whether or not an all-volunteer force is still sustainable today. The strange thing is, the problem isn't unique just to the United States. Canada and the UK are also significantly missing their force
Yeah, nobody
strength
wants to
numbers.
join the
Canada is
fucking army, dude.
7,600 members short, and the UK is likely to shrink down to 72,000 soldiers by 2025, which is 10,000 below goal. Some UK infantry regiments are reported to be understaffed by 30%.
If something isn't done to reverse these numbers
30%,
soon,
Jesus.
the current reduced force is going to be stretched to its absolute limit.
Other NATO allies like Turkey rely on mandatory service to fix this problem, with 32% of their ranks being conscripts, something that US politicians and military leaders strongly oppose.
Let's take a look at 4 key explanations for
Yeah,
why
I mean, nobody wants to be forced to join the military. Like, remember Vietnam? That was like probably one of the biggest policy reasons in like the Richard Nixon era, right? Nobody liked the Vietnam. Nobody likes joining the army by force. But maybe they'll have to force us. I don't know. Swiss is forced. Yeah, but I don't think they like it. I don't think the Swiss like being forced.
Financial problems, declining trust in the military, woke culture, and unqualified
Oh,
citizens.
woke culture. Dude, come on, bro.
One, a tight labor market could help explain why no one is joining. The U.S. unemployment rate is at 3.5%, around the lowest it's been in the better part of a decade, meaning recruiters have a smaller
A lot of
pool of
countries next to
recruits
Russia
draw
have
from if
conscription,
everyone
yeah.
already has
And those
better
countries are
paying,
pretty
easier
fucking
civilian jobs
bad.
readily available. For instance,
Well,
a
not
young
all.
private in the Army earns $22,000. An average high school graduate earns $40,000 per year. But this doesn't really fully explain the decline in recruitment because contrary to
Finnish
popular
people
belief,
don't seem to
when
mind it.
comparably measured,
That's
the
true,
US
though. Maybe the
entry-level
Finnish don't
military
mind it.
pay is about 8% higher than U.S. entry-level civilian pay. This is because the military covers healthcare, housing, and oftentimes food.
Uniform paid for, electric bill paid for, water bill paid for, living quarters paid for.
Wait, is this for real though? The U.S. Army has like a music video, a sort of diss track? What?
Famous performer Mia Khalifa had some insight into the financial problems facing the military recruitment.
Honestly, I think that selling your body, like if we're going by that definition, being in the army is worse than being on OnlyFans.
Wow.
You're selling your body to the government.
I didn't just sell my body to the government, I also sold my soul. But you know what? She might not
But again,
even be
they have
wrong.
like 3
If you're gonna
million
make
hot tubs
sacrifices
that make
necessary to
service
serve your
easier.
country, maybe you should earn a pretty
Fuck. Yeah, Mia Khalifa, what the fuck, dude? In Austria, we had a vote to get rid of conscription a couple of years ago, and we voted to keep it. Really? You guys kept the military conscription. Wow, that's insane. Switzerland having conscription despite not having any enemies. Yeah, being like the most neutral country in the world. I think Swiss gun culture is more useful than American gun culture. Oh, yeah, that's for sure. When it comes to helping a nation as a whole.
But don't worry,
yeah,
the
I
military
agree.
always has been known for being hip and non-traditional. They leveraged TikTok to solve the problem.
An army recruiter used Cameo to pay the island boys to help with his recruiting goals.
Army recruiter giving out bonuses, paid vacations, and a free college, no money. Hey, invite me right now, Sergeant Thomas. I want to be in the army.
Army recruiters have since been banned from using TikTok to recruit further, which has kneecapped their abilities to forge relationships in a world that has changed, where impressing students at a mall in your Class A uniform is becoming more and more rare. People are going out less. In response, Army recruiters have more than doubled their
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but why do they got banned on TikTok? I really want to know.
Bonuses, where recruits can earn $50,000 if they start training in the next 30 days for some jobs. So why hasn't this helped boost recruitment numbers? Young people reportedly fear PTSD is a major factor as to why they won't join.
A concern that might be well-founded, with 20% of service members returning from Iraq and Afghanistan showing signs of PTSD.
Oh, yeah,
much as
totally.
military
Yeah,
leadership-
PTSD was like huge thing. And I think that those numbers are not really representative of the like the real numbers, you know? You could say it makes you stoic. Conscription makes you learn hard work. Yeah, it does. Yeah, sure. That's true,
Would
though.
like to blame the tight labor market. This article from the Wall Street
Makes
Journal
you learn
points
to
out
slack.
it
Everybody's
doesn't
trying
really explain
his
the
best to
problem
avoid
fully.
work.
The unemployment rate today is actually roughly the same as it was in 2019, when the Army exceeded its recruiting goal. So the obvious question becomes, what major event happened
Yeah, what
between
happened? Oh, yeah.
2019 and today that might have affected recruiting numbers?
Number two, the
Reason
pandemic.
Number two, trust in the military. The 2021 Reagan National Defense Survey found there was a decline in American confidence in the military, stating, quote, "With all that has happened in the last year, it's understandable that Americans are experiencing a sense of pessimism. Public trust in the U.S. military
Okay,
has
this is
dropped
interesting,
from
though.
70% in 2018, prior to the pandemic, to today a lowly 56%.
Then Governor Kate Brown activating the National Guard as part of the
Oh.
Unified Command. A riot declared earlier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Except for PTSD, that sucks. Yeah, PTSD sucks. And imagine going to war. Just overall going to war fucking sucks. But now imagine all the protest, all of the rioting going on in the United States, of course, a lot of military were deployed to help on some of these riots. So yeah, that's bad.
Protests in downtown Portland.
More than 62,000 U.S. National Guard were mobilized to help prevent
60,000.
rioting that happened across the country during
Jesus.
2020. According to the National Guard Bureau, troops in 23 states were activated by governors to try to stamp down and quell the level of disorder. While I personally believe that this was a necessary measure, I could see where many young Americans could look at that today and...
Yeah, of course, a lot of young people are going to say, well, those protests were justified, and not necessarily that I agree, because I don't know the full context of all the protests, but yeah, it's a valid argument.
in the armed forces.
On the other hand, the military potentially earned a lot of people's respect for helping keep the peace.
However, it's important to keep those numbers in context.
Exactly.
Because while trust has declined in the military, they still remain one of the most high...
Conscription makes you think like a community and not like an individual, which I think it's a bad side for the West society. I actually agree with you, Tarkov. I think like heavy individualism is like very bad for like modern society. I do agree with that. Wish we could all evolve and solve our wars with nationwide paintball. That'd be great, dude. But it does its job, which is defending the state. True.
Highly regarded among American institutions, with only 6% of people saying they have no trust in the armed forces at all. For comparison, Congress is sitting at a lowly 10% and public education system at a 21%. As a product of public school systems, yeah, that tracks.
It's unfortunate, it's wrong, but this next quote shows how a lot of people distrust the military.
I'm joining the Marines in the USA. What do you think? I think you're a fool. You're a fool. Stupid. You ain't protecting nothing but profits for companies that don't care about you. They'll force you to take injections, which you don't even want.
And while I think a lot of what he says
Wait, what? Andrew Tate? Oh, God, bro. No. I mean, I think he's quoting him for the right reasons, because I do think that, yeah, bold. Oh, my God. What is this video? Andrew Tate.
Performance and trolling. If that is truly what people think about patriotism and service in the U.S. military today, then there must be some kind of way to fix this messaging problem.
How do you fix it,
There must be some kind of
dude?
advertising campaign that the military could run that wouldn't alienate half the country. As part of the Pentagon's reported $1.6 billion in recruitment spending each year, the Army released a new advertising campaign called The Calling in 2021.
Okay.
Let's put it this way, not everyone loved it. Critics said the recruitment campaigns were quote-unquote woke virtue signaling instead of an effective campaign to fill the ranks. Veterans believe that these commercials focused on aspects of new recruits that make them different and individual,
Oh, no,
especially
yeah.
unique snowflakes, which specifically
Man
runs
King
counter
in the
to
background,
military's
yeah,
traditional
so
culture
full.
of unity and selfless service. In reaction, the Army disabled comments on the video to ensure no one could express themselves on the video about expressing yourself. But this is part of a much broader problem in the entire NATO force.
Potential reason number
The
3 for
NATO.
low recruitment, woke military culture?
The Canadian government earmarked 200 million CAD to completely change their military's entire culture. Would this mean a shift of focus from winning wars to policing feelings and telling on fellow soldiers for minor speech infractions? The Canadian Minister of Defense, Anita Anand, claims the changes will address long-standing...
I don't like where this is going. I don't like it either. I mean, let's watch. I'm gonna be very quiet on this point because I really want to listen and see
deeply ingrained prejudice present in their forces. Canadian troop strength is currently 20% understaffed, meanwhile. On February 2nd, 2022, while Russia was preparing to invade Ukraine, the British Army was ordered by Chief of the General Staff, General Sir Mark Carlington-Smith, to stop training for a day to reflect on inclusivity. Whether the US, UK, or Canadian forces truly need to change their culture or not, the steps that are taken in order
Making
to
the military
achieve those
self
changes
makes
are
it less
sometimes
effective.
strange. The advertising in the United States was likely well-intentioned. It was meant to shatter negative...
I guess that's true, but for example, I don't see anything wrong with advertising like this, you know, with the advertising. I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's bad. So many recruiters in Ohio, probably because our schools are bad, and a lot of people in Ohio want to join the military. That would make sense. I do see people from Ohio joining the military, you know? I could see
perceptions
that.
of the Army about how it isn't accepting of certain groups of people. And to be fair, the U.S. Army has only allowed certain orientations to openly serve for 10 years out of the past 225 years that the institution has existed.
So on paper, creating an ad that explains that everyone
Who
is
would
welcome
want to
the
live
Army
in
doesn't sound
Ohio,
like that bad of
LOL.
an idea.
Whether or not the advertising succeeded in that regard is up for debate, but it did fail on its purpose of boosting recruiting numbers.
Evidence that media has a huge impact on recruiting numbers comes straight from the Navy's 500% boosted numbers from Top Gun.
Joining the military is about becoming a part of a uniform team. It's about putting what makes you unique and special aside in service of a common goal. It's like my old drill sergeant used to say, I dislike all of you equally. The problem with these commercials isn't that it's about
I dislike all of you equally. That's funny though. I didn't mean the ad. I mean making it less stoic. Yeah, no, I agree. I understand.
The very real threats to our freedoms. If the enemies of the Western world had their way, the rights of marginalized groups would greatly suffer, and that is a fact that I think both sides can get behind. But none of this really matters if the next generation aren't qualified to join the services in the first place.
Reason number 4, unqualified citizens.
Unqualified citizens, holy shit.
Approximately 70 to 75% of young Americans today are not even qualified to serve right off the bat due to being either overweight or having minor criminal infractions that come up on their background checks. Only 23% of candidates remain who don't require a waiver to join. That number is further reduced by more potential recruits being unable to pass the Army's academic exam called the infamous ASVAB. It's kind of like the SAT. The pool gets shrunk even further down to an above-ground pool when you consider another 12% are going to college. I know a lot of times I joke about having gotten an ASVAB waiver, but that's not true. I cheated on the test. If U.S. forces shrink by an additional 40,000 troops, there are some who believe we'd be reaching a breaking point for low troop numbers. Current members...
Yeah, that's true though. This is a point that I think I can really get behind. There's not a lot of qualified people to get into the military. Like, really, let's ask ourselves, how many of us are we really qualified to get into the military? Probably not many. Yeah, we gotta stop eating cheeseburgers and drinking Bud Light. Like, for real, dude. Yeah. And that sucks because everyone likes cheeseburgers and everyone likes Bud Light. I wonder if anyone's done a study on how and how much the military pays video game companies to promote the Army. I think that'd be interesting. I think there could be something there.
Added stress, longer deployments and mobilizations, and an increased likelihood of accidents and mistakes that could lead to.
But like this BS, LOL.
There are a number of solutions to turn the problem around for recruiting. More schools could adopt JROTC programs to help reach new candidates.
Corona is better.
Only 10% of schools have these kinds of programs.
I guess Corona
Better
is.
messaging targeted to reach.
I don't know. I'm more of a Bud Light
explaining why we need their skills
kind of
in
guy.
order to protect against the threats of enemies around the world who oppose their stated values of equity and inclusion. The military is faced with a difficult choice. They can lower standards and deal with unqualified recruits who are more likely to wash out within a few years, or they can increase the workload on the existing reduced force. Lieutenant General Thomas Fear said, quote, 2022 is the year we question the sustainability of an all-volunteer force.
Wow. We question the sustainability of an all recruited, all voluntary force. So wow, I don't think most Americans would like to have like a conscription again. I don't think they would like mandatory exercise. I think the USA should be more like Europe when it's mandatory exercise and food regulations. Yeah, I think I phrased it wrong. Yeah, but yeah, the US should make regulate the food and the ingredients. Oh yeah, totally. Like the US has some like really bad food. In Europe, it's all clean, it's all like organic. In the US, it's like fucking shit. I mean, it's terrible. I think we're gonna see some countries going conscript. Which countries do you guys think would have more conscripts? Can you watch World Friends, Spanish versus Italian world difference? Yeah, sure. We're gonna watch that one, and then we're gonna finish off with KRAUT. Well, not finish. I think it's still early. Let's watch that one. World Friends, Spain, Italy. So Spanish versus Italian. Can they understand each other? Oh, how similar are they? Is that the one? How similar are they? Yeah, that's the one.
Hello.
So, as a Spanish speaker, I think that Italian is like fairly similar, but I don't think you can understand that much of Italian as a Spanish speaker. But I've heard Italians can understand us better than what we can understand them. So, I don't know. French is like Latin Germanized. Yeah, I think Poland will have a ton of recruit. Well, yeah, when it fully materializes. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like this channel. Okay, I haven't seen this channel, but let's watch it.
For me, since I studied Spanish, there were some words we were reminded to not get confused, because first one, if we say in Italian burro, it means butter, but in Spanish it means
donkey.
Donkey. Yeah. So if you say I want pasta with burro, you won't get the
pasta
butter
with the
animal,
with the donkey.
And then there is another one, which is if we say in Italian
prank, right?
salire,
Yeah.
it means go up, but in Spanish it means
Salir, it means to go out.
Yeah.
So if I'm, it's like, so our teacher was like, if you're in the airport and you see a sign saying salir and you're looking for an escalator or a stair, it's not going to happen because it means go out.
Go out, like
So I still
exit, like
remember these
salida.
two.
I never thought about
Is a
it.
burrito
It's
donkey
true,
meat? No, it's not. It's not, man. That's why Spanish don't understand French like each other. Yeah.
Okay, and in Spanish we say estrella.
It's similar but different.
Yeah.
Like if I just look
Stella,
at the word,
estrella.
it's kind of similar, but there is an R that is there
It's-
that should not be
it's-
there. L,
What?
we say la. So if it's an Italian accent, it would be estrella. Estrella.
Ah, okay.
If I read it, I'm like, oh, estrella. But
Estrella.
But if I heard that, probably I wouldn't think about a stella, a star.
Okay, so yeah, that's a huge difference. It's not only about how you write it, but how you pronounce it. So yeah, I get it. I understand what she's
I cannot
saying.
recognize if I say estrella is estella.
Oh yeah, because
Sounds very different.
yeah, the L is
Ah,
different
okay.
and there is an R inside that. So
I think I will be struggling with initial S because it happens the same with the English. You don't have to use the E in front. So everybody knows that I say Andrea from Spain. So in Estella is very similar. Like
I would understand it. I think I would understand Stella. I think that English people can understand French more easily than Italian and all the other Latin. Oh, that's interesting though.
you have to put an E.
Yeah.
I understand
need it. It's
Stella.
like, how can I only say S? Stella?
Stella.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's easier in Italian than in English.
Stella.
Stella.
Oh, she's right. She's good.
Estrella.
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 Estrella. Sounds like Russian. Sounds like
Estrella,
Russian.
it's
no,
not that hard.
Estrella.
Estrella.
Flower.
In
Flor.
Spanish we say flor.
In Italian we say fiore.
Fiore.
Yeah, so I think that if we hear flor, it's going to be easy for us to understand.
See, you already did one thing that is very common in the Italian pronunciation. Like, say again, flor.
Flor.
Flor. It's like flor. They wanna, just like adding something else.
Yeah. Flor is like they want to add something else. I get that. Because of the Normans, yeah. In Spanish, it's flor. It's very simple. In French, it's fleur. Yeah, I think I would also understand that in French, fleur. I think that's very simple, right? Or fairly easy to understand in Spanish.
So
Fiore, I would also understand.
I can
Fiore,
notice that
you know, that's...
Italian.
Flor.
Yeah, it just ends more abrupted, I guess, like flor.
How do you say that?
Flor.
Flor.
Yeah, now it's better. But sometimes I heard like kind of vowel. Like,
Yeah, it's really
flore,
difficult for us.
flore,
Like,
flore,
yeah,
like
if you end a word with a consonant for an Italian person, it's quite difficult because like you're running
So
and
inconvenient that half of
Yeah,
English
like-
is either French or Latin.
Stop.
Yeah,
So
very
it's really
inconvenient.
difficult. So we have a kind of a vowel after that. We don't actually know about that, but then you meet people from other countries and they're like saying to you, pointing to you, oh, you're doing this like too long.
yeah, it's like some pressure there, like.
Yeah, you want to say things right. Yeah. I wish I could speak other languages. I think it's something cool. You know, I speak English and Spanish, and I think I really enjoy it. It has opened a lot of doors for me. You know, I've been able to have a YouTube channel with people from all over the world. So that has definitely been a huge pro for me.
So Italian is arancia.
Yeah, sounds similar, but it's different.
It doesn't sound similar at all.
Naranja.
Naranja. I think that we could understand.
I wouldn't understand arancia.
Well, and because a lot of products also.
In French, it's literally orange. In German, it's orange. Yeah, it's like the color orange, right? In Spanish, it's the same. It's naranja. Like, that's how you say the color orange and the fruit orange. You know, it's like the same thing. I mean, it's convenient because I can easily guess what a French sentence means. And I'm sometimes right. Yeah, you could. Yeah. That has helped me. Because I know English, I could also understand French a little better. But yeah, this one I wouldn't understand. Arancia, I wouldn't understand.
Who
that.
doesn't know that arancia is naranja?
I don't.
Food, especially like word foods.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah,
each other words quite easily. Yeah, if there is an e or an I after the C, it's going to be ch. And if there is a o u, it's going to be ku ka ko. So it's not ch, it's k. And if you want the k sound with the I or an e,
orange is Germanized. I've been learning Spanish and English. It's definitely helpful. Oh yeah, you have very good English.
Zumo de
naranja.
naranja.
Zumo, or also you can use the S in other, like there is other.
For example, that's a difference between Spanish from Spain and Spanish from Mexico. In Spain, they say zumo, which is like the word for juice, orange juice. But in Mexico, we don't use that word. We use a different one. We say jugo, which is juice in Spanish, right? So jugo de naranja instead of zumo de naranja. It's not very different, but it's a difference that still matters to some of us. Yeah, really, I find learning French a lot easier than Spanish. Guess they have linguistic ties. Yeah, they do.
It's more like sumo or like that. But I cannot mimic it. Sorry.
Sumo, it's the first time I heard that.
Oh,
I knew about naranja. I didn't know about sumo.
Sumo de naranja. Okay.
There are some similarities between German and Spanish for some reason too. Really?
Caja.
In Italian, it's casa.
Casa. Sounds like casa.
Casa.
Casa is
home.
Yeah.
Home. Yeah, it would be confused for
That's a different, like we say casa to say house, but I know that in Spain you say casa. Like you put more emphasis
Casa,
on
yeah.
S. Really? You say casa?
If English was fully German, it would be so much hard to communicate with Latin languages. Oh yeah, 100%.
For us to make the S sound, it means there are two S. If there is one S and then there is an, what's that?
Maybe
A. There is an A, then it's going to be za.
Maybe between vowels, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the cartel situation in Mexico. It's been bad lately. I mean, here where I am, it's very safe. It's Mexico City, you know. It's like we're good. There's nothing happening here. But it's some parts of the country, it's been very bad, very dangerous, and yeah, people have been concerned about the cartel situation. Actually, there's a movement to make English more Germanic. It's called English. Really? Had no idea. English is this wild German-Latin mix. Yeah.
Yeah.
English is a pretty interesting language, I would say.
I have all the time the impression that is similar and at the same time very different. Okay, in Spanish,
Little Celtic,
he is
llave.
And in Italian we say chiave.
Chiave. Sounds softer.
It's similar.
Chiave, chiave. Yeah, if I pronounce...
there are videos on it, yeah. There are videos on it, but I don't know if I should play them because of the YouTube monetization rules. But maybe we could watch some of them. I don't know. Basically, just place names. Clef or cle to say key. Cle. That how you say cle? In Spanish, you say llave, and that's also in Mexico, llave. That's how you say it.
Heard about the Italian? I would say.
Oh, videos on English. Oh, okay, yeah. Maybe we can watch some of them.
In Spanish, we say tomate,
and then in Italian we say pomodoro.
There is many restaurants, many Italian restaurants.
Yeah, called pomodoro, yeah.
Il pomodoro.
But this is quite interesting because pomo actually means in dialect means apple, and then doro, gold. So gold apple. I don't know why they called it like that.
Never imagine that. For me, pomo, only pomo, is the door.
Ah, the handle?
Yeah.
D it's for off.
De oro.
De oro.
Ah, de oro.
Francais, Canadian,
So then it should be,
Québécois.
how do you call it?
Tomate.
How call it?
Tomate?
There
Is that how you say it in French?
and then
Tomate?
this, and then oro.
Ah, that is it.
In Spanish, you say tomate, or in Mexico, we say it a little bit different. We say jitomate, which is just a little different. But yeah, pomodoro.
That is from the Catalan. In Catalan, you can put a T, like
Yeah,
a...
E silent.
Yeah, like accent.
Oh, okay.
It's not
Something.
an accent.
Tomate.
And after,
Tomate.
or, that means gold.
It combines two words, so it should be di oro, but if you put vowel, it's going to be really difficult to pronounce.
Yeah.
So di oro, it doesn't sound really natural. So you put this one, and then you just take away the I, so it becomes toro.
Shark,
This
tiburón.
is very different, yeah. Okay, in Spanish, shark is tiburón. Que te come el tiburón.
we just say squalo.
Squalo. That's fucking weird. Yeah.
And there is also a song. Se la llevó el tiburón, el tiburón. No pare, sigue, sigue, no pare. Never heard about that? It's like in all.
I mean, what is she talking about? Red Queen. Wow, never heard that change had Celtic origins. Thanks for educating me. I remember I tried to learn French on Duolingo, and half of the letters are silent. Yeah, there's a lot of silent letters in French. I had French in my high school. I didn't learn anything at all because it was so hard. A lot of the letters were silent, and I didn't knew.
All the little town parties sometimes.
There is this song.
Very late. It's a very old song, and actually it's Latin song. It's not from Spain.
Oh, I see.
I think it's not from Spain, but it's really famous.
Red Queen is a Norman origin.
Uno, dos,
Due.
tres,
Quattro.
Ok. Tres, cuatro,
Cinco.
cinco, seis,
6,
siete,
7,
ocho,
8,
nueve,
9,
diez.
Yeah.
10.
Very similar.
Very
How do you
similar.
call this again? How do you call that again?
Tiburón.
Tiburón.
Se la llevó el tiburón, el tiburón.
Tiburón.
Yeah, actually, I don't know where it comes from.
Tiburón,
Squalo
shark.
Also,
Doesn't tell you anything?
no.
The R sound in French always gets me. Yeah.
The origin.
I'm glad
of
Spanish
these
is pronounced like it's
Because
written. Oh
normally all
yeah,
the
it makes it so
origin,
easy.
from the
Guys,
Spanish-
if you want to learn a language, learn Spanish. It's really not that hard. It's actually pretty simple. And most of you would be pretty good at it. So, learn Spanish. A common joke in France is saying that Spanish is just French with O at the end of every word. Okay, that's an interesting joke. We unfortunately don't have any jokes on you, but I like that joke. Learn Norwegian. Norwegian, I've heard, is easy. Got any tips for learning Spanish? Just the basic stuff, man. Like watch a lot of movies, listen to a lot of songs, right? A lot of Spanish songs recently have been very popular, at least in the US.
Words, they came from the Latin from.
Hoy voy a comer tiburón.
Seriously?
So today we compared words from Spanish and Italian.
If you like the video, please like and subscribe or leave a comment.
Hey, I
We'll
like
see you
this
soon.
video. That was pretty fun. No, I'm gonna give a like. Maybe I'll subscribe. Yeah, sure, why not? That was pretty fun though. Yeah, we need a look at this comment. We need an Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese trio. It would be so interesting. I'm learning Spanish and Italian actually. Oh yeah, both of them? That seems complicated, but congratulations if you are able to pull it off. I mean, wow. Yeah, I'm across the pond, so that Latin influence, it's all sucky French. Yeah. Or want to go very easy but impractical, learn Frisian. What's Frisian? Yeah, I guess you could learn Frisian. Frisian. Like I said, French is like a Germanic Latin hybrid. Yeah, French is horrible. Don't learn French. It's just, so complicated. Oh, we have a KRAUT video. KRAUT, 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 KRAUT. What even is Europe? Huh. KRAUT, 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 KRAUT.
This video is about the European Union, specifically examining it within the context of Europe.
So, you guys that are European, what do you guys think Europe is? How would you define Europe? Because I think that's a real good question. What is Europe? I mean, where does Europe end? When does Europe begin? Who is European? Who isn't? If you really ask those questions, I think you get to some really interesting answers. I don't know about you, but I think it's just really interesting. Yeah, I'm only joking. French is cool, just Paris. Paris, yeah, it's complicated. You know what? Maybe the cartel are deserved after all. Wow, that's odd. Europe is a continent and civilization. I'll start with Portugal and end in Russia. Kazakhstan, a continent, yeah. I think it's a very interesting question, and I think we're gonna get a very interesting answer from our favorite YouTuber, KRAUT, 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 KRAUT. Europe is geography, and it's stopped at the Ural Mountains to the east. A continent. Yeah, a lot of people are saying a continent. Let's see what KRAUT has to say.
European history and how we should interpret and understand it in that context. What the purpose of the European Union may be, and what the European Union means for the future of Europe.
It's pretty abstract when you think about it.
This video is also sponsored by Enlisted. Enlisted is a first-person shooter set during the Second World War. You can play the game for free on
You have a very German
Xbox,
vision of the
It
EU.
includes campaigns set
Like
in
the
Pacific,
video. Yeah,
Eastern
let's give it a
Front,
like,
Battle of
sure.
Normandy, and North Africa. I personally prefer playing the Pacific campaign the most, since that scenario is often ignored.
I think KRAUT is Austrian. Yeah, I also think he's from Austria.
Before, you should feel right at home. You join the game for free and pick a squad specialization, from infantryman to sniper.
Oh, he's a German living in
As you
Austria.
progress with your
Oh,
squad
that's
through the
interesting,
game, you will
though.
earn XP points to upgrade your squad and gear.
I
There are also
thought,
various different.
you know, what does the word KRAUT mean? Is it like a word? Does it have like a meaning? Or it's just like his name? Like his name is KRAUT.
Game modes to choose from invasion, that positions one team on the defense while the other has to take the ground, to armored train escort, where one side has to protect an
It looks like a fun game. You know.
can download and play the
I'd
game
play
for
it.
free by using the link in the description. If you use that link, you will also gain access
Oh,
to free
wow. KRAUT is an English slur for a German. KRAUT means cabbage. I think he was British until I heard him pronounce German words. KRAUT was usually used as an insult against Germans in World War II, I think. Mostly used in English, was as an ethnic slur for a German, particularly a German soldier during World War I and II. Mostly used during World War I. What? Why would he use it as his name, as a, as a slur? Why would he use that? I mean, I guess he doesn't feel bad about it, but don't you guys think it's a little weird? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm tripping, but I think it's a little strange.
For sponsoring this video.
KRAUT,
Conversations about the
Jesus
historical
Christ.
context of political development in which we ought to understand
A lot of
the
slurs from
European
Germany and
Union are some of
France.
the most divisive of our time. We Europeans love to tear
He's
each
a
other
German
apart over
soldier, I
these issues.
guess.
What even is the
It's
European
less
Union?
offensive now.
How should we
okay.
understand the development of the European Union in the context of historical political developments? I'm
Fritos,
going to
yeah,
make this video
bro.
opening that can of worms to enjoy the circus and chaos that will evidently result in the comment sections. One of the most insightful perspectives I ever got on what the European Union may be is from a conversation I had with a viewer from China in my Discord server.
From China?
He told me that from his perspective of interpreting history as a Chinese national, the worst thing that ever happened to Europe was the collapse of the Roman Empire. He draws parallels between the history of Rome and the histories of the Qin and Han dynasties. Both set out on the task of unifying their regions and binding a patch.
We don't get offended by someone calling us KRAUT. Oh, okay. Bosch or Hun, on the other hand, are very much insults. Bosch or Hun, well, I don't want to say it, but Jesus.
Cultures together
Okay, well,
under
it's
a
good to know.
civilization state. But whereas the Qin and Han succeeded in creating the foundation
love
of
the
the
Germans,
Chinese
yeah.
civilization state, the Romans failed. For centuries to come, different Europeans
Prussia,
would
Spain, the
desperately try to
Habsburgs,
revive
Holy
the
Roman
project of
Empire.
the European civilization state, to create a middle kingdom of Europe of sorts. But all of them failed. Instead, Europe became a
So you guys are throwing all of those lures in the comments, huh? Le Gru? That's how you say it? Le Gru? Lechlu?
place of deep divisions which undermined the creation of a unified European civilizational polity, and it
Bosh.
instead created
Jesus.
nations. They expanded outside of Europe by imperialism
colonized,
in attempts
yeah.
to collect the resources needed to unite Europe. By mistake, created American civilization and exported their systems of ethnic and religious political divisions to places.
Yeah, too long didn't read Chinese things of fractured nations as politically backwards. Yeah. They're not really the N-word made. Oh, okay, well that's where I'm getting from. Friction. Learning German is easy for you. US English. Oh yeah. All the German. Yeah, if you speak already a German language like English, you can easily speak Dutch or German
like
or
Africa and Asia. This European imperialism ultimately failed, and the European Union, from his perspective, is the latest attempt to finalize and create a post-imperial unified European civilization.
I don't think this is true.
He explained that to him and to many of his Chinese compatriots, the European Union is viewed favorably. For if it would come to be as a civilizational polity that unifies Europe,
Dutch is
they
really
believe
similar,
that its
yeah.
emphasis on social democracy and regulated markets over the ruthless capitalism of the United States will lead to a split between the two, and thereby
very
further the
ideological,
creation
but I
of a
guess
multipolar
you
world.
could.
Now, I do not agree with our Chinese view.
okay.
In particular, his concept of civilization and his geopolitical biases are also very clear.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I find it very interesting and worth presenting. It certainly is an interesting perspective on how European imperialism came to be.
There's definitely if you're Dutch, you've got like a head start on French, English, or German. Yeah, it's so unfair. Yeah, English is the weird one in the Germanic family, though. Yeah, I would understand that, but I guess it's like sort of, kind of easy. I want to guess. And in Mexico, the European Union is viewed very favorably. We love Europe. We have nothing against Europe. We are a European society after all. So we do appreciate the European Union and Europe as a whole. We don't agree with like Brexit, right? Mexicans, the ones who know about Brexit, don't agree with it or wouldn't want to be more Brexits. I never learned German, but doesn't Volk mean people or folk? Yeah, H0ser. Oh, okay. Volkswagen, that's how you say
It
it?
gives a twist on a popular way of interpreting history.
Volkswagen?
In essence,
Volkswagen?
our Chinese friend is saying, actually,
Brexit's
you
stupid,
Europeans
yeah.
are
I was
the
too
bad
young
ones.
to vote,
We
unfortunately.
Chinese
Damn.
resolved the question of establishing a common civilizational polity over 3,000 years ago, while you failed. You instead adopted the nation, and the nation is a political regression that is inferior to the civilizational polity. But you, Europeans, are gradually on the road to accomplishing what...
Yeah, but that's not necessarily true. The Chinese, they all speak Chinese, and sure, there are different dialects of Chinese. You've got Cantonese, you've got like Mandarin Chinese, so you have different dialects, but at the end of the day, it's the same language. It's Chinese. That's not the case in Europe. You don't have... Europe speaks a lot of different languages. German, French, English, Polish, Spanish, right? Blah, 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 blah. So it's not the same. I don't think you can say the same thing about Europe and China.
What we Chinese accomplished 3,000 years before you.
No, that's
and
not true.
We welcome your progress. Now, I disagree with this narrative, but there is one thing in particular regarding European political development on which our Chinese friend is, in my opinion, correct. The European Union is a post-imperial political project. A project that not only strives to overcome conflict among nation states, but a project that seeks to build an alternative to imperialism. Overcoming conflict between nation states is one of the main stated goals of the European political project. The common fiction that many Europeans tell themselves to be the foundation of the European Union is the myth of the state that learned from history. That Europeans, after decades of bloodshed and violence, decided to learn from history. Determined that to avoid conflict, Europeans needed to learn to share among themselves, and therefore created a unique system of international cooperation. Far-right critics of the European Union
Italians.
often invoke an opposing political fiction, the golden era of nationalism from the 1920s to 1930s, that the collapse of European empires during the First World War led to the almost natural development into smaller nation-states based on nationality defined through language or ethnicity, who supposedly existed in peace. Now, besides the fact that anyone who praises the politics of 1930s Europe is always kind of suspicious anyway, this idea is
Very
also
sus.
generally...
In my opinion, Chinese languages are more like a language family, like the Romance family. Honestly, I have like, I have very few. I don't have a lot of information to say that's true or not. In my opinion, I have no opinion on it. Langfocus make a video in English.
Untrue. The interwar period was not an era of peace. In fact, this era contains the most wars fought in Europe during the 20th century. The Soviet invasion of Georgia, the Soviet invasion of Armenia, the Soviet invasion of Azerbaijan,
Bunch of Soviet invasions.
of Ukraine, the first Soviet invasion of Poland, the first Soviet invasion of Finland, the first Soviet invasion of Estonia,
A lot
the
of
first
Soviets,
Soviet
we get
invasion
it,
of
yeah.
Lithuania, and the first Soviet invasion of Latvia. What these wars, almost all involving the Soviet Union, show us is that the death of Central European and Eastern European traditional empires almost instantly resulted in the re-emergence of new European empires to take their place. Especially the early 1920s saw an extremely aggressive new Soviet empire attempting to conquer and subjugate much of Eastern Europe. Now, to be fair, right-wing historians acknowledge this, and they describe communism as an attempt at eradication of the nation-state by a new form of imperialism. However, here is something that far-right historians often tend to ignore. The Polish-Ukrainian War, the Georgian-Armenian War, the Georgian-Turkish War, the Armenian-Azerbaijani War, the Greek-Turkish
like a bunch of war.
the Polish-Lithuanian War, the Hungarian-Romanian War, the Hungarian-Czechoslovak War, the Greek-Bulgarian War, and the Czechoslovak-Polish War. The interwar period saw almost all new
Wow,
nation
there were
states
really like a bunch of wars at that time. I didn't knew. At least I didn't knew of all of them. Why are Russian states like this? I don't know. People in Ohio claim they're German, like Boston with being Irish. Yeah, if you're like randomly born in Ohio, like would you automatically claim you're German? Because people in Boston, like they do claim to be Irish. I think France far right is the only one who doesn't see the early 20th century as a golden age. I don't know if that's good or bad, but
born from the First World War engage in border disputes and expansionist squabbles over who owned what. Often these squabbles were not even about ethnic or lingual groups who lived on disputed lands, but over resources. The Czechoslovak-Polish War was, for example, fought over a region of Silesia that was majority Czech and German, but which the Poles wanted because of its enormous coal deposits. The reason for all of these conflicts is that the idea of a self-limiting nation-state did not exist at that time. Nationalism, as
you
created
recover,
in the
go to war,
1800s, right
repeat.
up to the
Yeah,
1920s,
that's so
was a
true.
political force that in fact actively tried to build spheres of influence over peoples outside of one's respective nationality. Many European nationalist movements, in fact, built upon an idea of their own cultural or ethnic superiority and saw it as part of their nation-creating mission to domineer over others on that basis. The self-limiting nationalism that argues for a nation-state that deliberately shuns spheres of influence over others is not even a Western European political innovation, but the Turkish one. Ataturk was the first political thinker to formulate that idea in the late 1920s. It is one of the founding pillars of Kemalism.
Well, I don't know if this is necessarily good, but
Turkish isolationism. In many ways, our modern understanding of nationalism was invented by the Turks. The collapse of European empires is similar.
That's right. So if you're watching this on YouTube, on a later video, we have done reactions to all of his series on Turkey, and I think it's probably one of my favorite videos
to the
of
collapse of
KRAUT.
Yugoslavia, resulting in the emergence
Never heard
of
Norwegian,
fresh
but I'm going
states
to
who
now.
instantly engaged in petty squabbles over who owned what and who was
The
what.
Amish make good
The way
furniture.
some
I don't think I've ever met
nationalists
an
formulated
Amish
political
person.
fictions that declared Montenegrins as an inherent cultural part bound to Serbia in many ways reminds me of how the Czechs created a fiction of the Slovaks as an inherently bound part of Czechia. There was no golden age of European nation-states and nationalism, as many right-wing critics of the European Union claim. The era of European nation-states were 2 decades of war and instability, and it is this squabbling and conflict between states that is the mission of the European Union to overcome. Many non-Europeans often overlook this aspect and purpose of the European Union and of modern European politics: reconciliation. In 1984, the French president François Mitterrand and the German Chancellor Helmut Kohl met at Verdun, the site of the most vicious fighting of the First World War. They stood at the coffin of an unknown soldier who was draped in the flag of both nations, held hands, and attended over a ceremony of remembrance together. Rituals like these are a core component of the success of the European project and have to be maintained for that project.
I mean, Slovakia has the right to exist because I think Czechia is Bohemia. I know, right? I also think Czechia is Bohemia. Some people dispute Scots are a separate language, but I personally looked into Scot much. You hear
to continue and succeed. We tend to overlook the importance of ritual in politics, but rituals, no matter how much they may or may not be formalized, lie at the center of all political engagement. And the rituals of reconciliation are an important pillar of what the European Union is built upon. It is a promise that enables economic cooperation in the first place.
Please,
some non-Europeans often dismiss this as little more than an expression of a supposedly masochistic German guilt. But these state rituals, in fact,
I love how they have the red cap and it says Ooga Booga, you know, just like Americans being American, you know, Ooga Booga,
masochistic German guilt. But these state rituals, in fact, should not be labeled as such.
Mitterrand was always a fan of German, used to work in Vichy France. Oh,
a common peace, and they are not only conducted by Germany. When the Soviet occupation of Eastern Europe ended, all the newly liberated countries engaged in foreign policies of reconciliation and peace to overcome any and all enmities that may still remain from the interwar period. Bulgaria and Greece also underwent this process of reconciliation during the 1920s.
Oh, that's nice.
Italy and Greece before. But this process has also on occasion failed, most prominently between Hungary and many of its neighbors. The Orban government, through its constant denial of the sovereign integrity of its neighbors, is a factor that continuously undermines and challenges the core foundation of reconciliation.
Bro, what's up with Hungary, dude?
A process of reconciliation and friendship between Greece and Turkey was successful throughout the 2000s, but then unfortunately collapsed during the 2010s. But by far the biggest failure in European reconciliation was with Russia. 2 consecutive German governments invested in
I love that too. I love how this chat is like a melting pot of history nerds and fun facts. I think we are all history nerds.
Energy policy that they believed would result in an economic codependence that would guarantee peace. And while there was hope in the early 2010s of a reconciliation between Russia and Poland, Russia eventually destroyed any hopes of reconciliation with Europe. So to summarize,
with Europe as a whole,
foundations of
like that's huge.
As a political entity is not the destruction of individual nation states, but the facilitation
Very smart
of peace
German.
through reconciliation. And importantly, as Russian gas shows us, reconciliation must come before economic cooperation. And to ensure cooperation can continue, this process of reconciliation, as well as the rituals of reconciliation, must be continued. Those who disrupt this process should be sanctioned for doing so. And if the European Union is to expand, it must export this process as a requirement to those who wish to apply.
Turkey and
Another
Armenia,
aspect of
yes,
understanding the
absolutely.
European Union in its political context of development is to create a political system of organization that can persevere in a post-imperial age. And this is where I agree, but also disagree with our Chinese friend. There's a political thinker from before the European Union whose ideas in many ways predate the European Union, but can also in some ways be found within the aspects of the European Union, be it intentional or not. Józef Pilsudski, the leader of the First Polish Republic. The political mission of his state
Would you look at that?
idea that is largely forgotten today, called Prometheanism. Pilsudski and other Polish intellectuals of the Polish independence movement believed that imperialism was a form of political organization that was doomed to fail, and that they lived during the era of its demise. Poland was one of the first nations to attain independence from the death of imperialism, and it was therefore Poland's national duty to not build a new Polish empire, but to hasten the process of killing imperialism in its entirety. And Poland's principal target of this ought to be the destruction of Russian imperialism by supporting any and all independence movements within its borders, because Russian imperialism was the primary threat to
Poland. Yeah.
Pilsudski also correctly asserted that the Soviet Union was not a new means of political organization, but just a rebranded Russian imperialism. As part
Chobo doesn't laugh at my messages, just give me a bad look and go back to the video. Bro. Sometimes your messages are funny, but sometimes are a little strange. Like you said, Mexico deserved the cartel violence. That's a little strange. That's a little rough. But I laugh at your messages,
Part of
bro.
Prometheanism, Poland ought to help create a geopolitical sphere called the Intermarium, a federation of all states in a triangle between the Baltic
This is
Sea
very
and
interesting.
Adriatic Seas, as a common
Very, very
economic
interesting.
and military alliance against the aggressive imperial ambitions of Russia, Germany, and Italy. Now, none of this ever came to be. If it had,
Yeah,
it would have
unfortunately.
probably prevented the Second World War. Poland itself
Ha!
ended up bickering with many of its neighbors throughout the European nation-state bickerings of the 1920s and 1930s.
Yeah,
But
they
the
had
historical
wars.
realities aside, there is a core truth to what Pilsudski believed, and an important truth as well. The key to overcoming and resisting imperialism is for nation-states who would usually fall.
Yeah, I think Hungary is culturally European, but not in the lingual sense. Yeah, I think I would probably agree
Victim
with
to
that.
imperialism to cooperate together. Pilsudski's ghost can very much be seen in the policies of the former Soviet bloc in Europe. Cooperation to withstand
Polish are more
outside
Aryan than German. Oh.
aggression. And this in some sense is one of the key promises
Spicy
of the
take.
modern European project. Reconciliation does not only offer the prospect of economic cooperation, but comes with the promise of
Whoa,
protection
whoa, whoa,
from
yeah.
empire to
Whoa.
create a political structure that can overcome empire. Curiously enough, though, almost
Aryan
all the
is like
founding
Iranian.
countries
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
European
That kind
Union
of
were not
Aryan.
nation states, but European empires. They either still had overseas empires or were recent European empires. Britain was also an empire when it joined. It is important to acknowledge and admit the fact that the European Union was created by dying and dead empires, who
Yeah.
sought out a means of existence after empire. This also helps us understand modern political myths and misconceptions. A large part of the Brexit campaign, for example, was driven on the promise of returning to an imagined great past when Britain was just a nation-state. This
Yeah.
is a lie. Britain
It's a
never
lie, yeah,
existed
it's
as
not
a
gonna
nation
happen
state
again.
before the European Union. It only existed as an empire.
Yeah, that's what a lot of movements, a lot of political movements do, especially maybe I would imagine in Europe, right? Especially think about Donald Trump literally make America great again. And Brexit was seen as some sort of make the United Kingdom or make Great Britain great again, right? Like the old days, like the good old days when we were a superpower. But there's no empire anymore. You can't govern a bunch of nations anymore. So you're stuck with a bunch of problems now, you know? That was still funny. I do find it ironic when Hungarian PMs talks about only mixing with Europeans and ethnic purity, considering history. Yeah, oh yeah. I feel like the French elite sees the EU as something France can lead to be a big power once again. I mean, France is a big power. Still.
When Britain joined the common market, it was still an overseas empire that could hitch onto its foreign properties to stay afloat and dictate policies to others. Britain joined so it could take part in cooperation with Europeans to stay afloat as its empire died.
Collapsed.
Britain, as a sole nation-state without an empire, only exists since 2016 after Brexit, and the British, through that decision, are now forced the hard way to confront the fact that they are no longer an empire and no longer in a position to dictate policy to anyone. In many ways, the European project came to similar conclusions as Pilsudski and the Prometheans had in the 1920s. The foundations of a post-imperial political order must be cooperation of nation-states and the abandoning of imperial ambitions.
That's
This
why
harbors
Macron
potential
wants a
conflict
EU
in Europe's
military.
future. France
I didn't
is
know that they
Europe's
want.
last
Yeah, Australia is a world power. Yeah, I wouldn't say that, but I guess in a weird sense it is a global power.
And one thing our Chinese viewer is correct about is that European empires used resources from colonies to gain advantages in the power struggles of Europe. France also uses its overseas spheres of influence, in particular in Africa, to gain advantages in Europe today, and thereby cause resentments and hinder European integration. An example, France is proud of its energy independence through
The
nuclear.
way France intervenes in West Africa, almost identical to the USA and Southeast Asia and the Middle East. Huh.
Power.
Yeah.
Half of the French nuclear fuel comes from Canada, but the rest comes from mines in its African sphere of influence.
Mm.
If it loses its African sphere of influence, it
Mali
will either
and
have
France,
to purchase
yeah.
more expensive nuclear fuel from Canada, Australia, or
You
the
don't
United
agree with
States,
him on
or turn
this.
to a
Huh.
European solution of cooperation. Ukraine has the largest uranium deposits in Europe. To get cheap Ukrainian uranium, France would have to stop blocking Ukrainian European Union membership.
Except
But
for the
through this
bombing, yeah.
compromise, it would have to allow Ukraine to sell its cheap agricultural produce to compete with French agricultural produce. As you can see, the fact that France still clings on to remnants of its empire comes as a detriment to a further European integration.
Oh,
because
yeah.
it means that France can avoid compromises that it else would have to make. And that is the core sacrifice that every participant in the European project makes. Everyone always has to compromise. Everyone has to make some sacrifices in order
Less
to live
migrants.
together
Jesus,
all
Italy.
in common. France keeping its empire gives it an unjust
Imperialism
advantage in
is
the
when
process,
you
and
but
many
nuclear
European
to
countries are
Africa.
increasingly unhappy with this. To maintain
When you
cooperation
buy
with Europe,
nuclear to
France
Africa.
will have to probably let go of its influence in Africa in the near future. And here is where I disagree with our Chinese friend. I do not see the European political project.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's... Well, I'll listen to what he has to say and then
Just
maybe I'll give
another
an opinion.
empire, or the attempted creation of a European civilization.
We need migrants,
policy
yeah.
as a player in a
With the zero
multipolar
babies in
world.
the West.
I believe its model of national cooperation is a framework that in the long term can undermine the entire concept of polarity and create a post-imperial world.
Yeah.
And for that to succeed, the
That's
concept
nice.
must
That
also
sounds
be
good.
promoted abroad. This is something often pointed out by Portuguese politicians who argue that Europe should seek deeper ties, cooperation and trade with the Mercosur, African Union and ASEAN rather than with the United States. That Europe should promote national cooperation from
Okay,
the
well.
Mercosur, African Union and ASEAN as an alternative to being in an American sphere of influence or a Chinese sphere of influence. In summary, that cooperation between nation states as a political development can function as a
Those
mechanism
kebab
to
shops
overcome
don't hurt either, yeah.
imperialism and create
A good kebab
post-imperial
at 1 a.m. in the morning when you're fucking
Thank you again
wasted.
to Enlisted for sponsoring this.
Also, the German and Poles should buy French weapons and not American if they want European autonomy. Yeah, and that's a good argument on that side. Maybe they should buy French weapons. But maybe France should also buy Ukrainian uranium instead of going to Mali because it's cheaper and they do have a lot of influence. And do you guys know what's the influence that France has via like the French, the West African franc, like the currency of West Africa? I think there's some videos that talk about like how France still influences some of its former African colonies via its currency, right? I don't know if you guys know about that. I think they're only Eurasia, not in Europe or Asia. Ukraine is not in the EU though. No, but France is vetoing like the Ukrainian membership, right? For a reason. Ukraine wants to spend 5% of GDP on their military. That's pretty extreme. It is extreme. The US, for example, spends 3.5%, which is a lot already. Yeah, 5% is a lot. But I mean, I do understand them. Russia is like a huge threat for Ukraine. It's like a big threat. Sorry, not for Ukraine, for Poland, not for Ukraine. So yeah, do you guys think China will ever militarily challenge NATO? I don't think so. Yeah, the fact France makes ex-colony pay them is wild, yeah. And you guys don't have Russia right next to... Yeah, that's true though, yeah. The US doesn't have to worry about really Russia doing any military movement, you know? Why were the Irish hated? Oh, yeah. Why were the Irish hated on America? Yeah. That's true, though. I do wanted to watch that. Why were the Irish hated? Once hated. That's going to be a good video. There we go. So the Irish were hated once in America. That's odd, especially when you consider that the Irish people are very white.
Irish immigrants of the
right?
19th century are used today as this perfect example of America's melting pot.
Yeah, the Irish were once hated, now they are not. So much heat towards the French in this chat. Yeah, I mean, chat is interesting. This chat is very interesting. Sometimes they fight, sometimes they love each other. Bro, France literally help its colony. Oh God! Oh, now it's talking about colonies. Yeah.
Who, through hardship, eventually became so assimilated they were distinct, patriotic Americans. Yippee! In fact, the Irish assimilated so well The nationwide hatred they faced when first coming to the US is either entirely forgotten or now seen as so absurd in hindsight.
It's gone for sure.
But in the 1850s, it was not absurd. The Irishman was seen as a legitimate threat to the decency of the United States. A foreigner who was sometimes, not figuratively, but literally, viewed as an in-between.
Yeah, this stereotype of the Irish being alcoholic and buying beer and whatnot, it's very strange.
Of a man and beast. That drunkenness that makes St. Patrick's Day celebrations famous was once viewed with disgust by most Americans only 150 years ago. And the question I wondered was, why were the Irish so hated? What was the origins of this incredible disgust the Americans had for them? Why didn't we see the same for other immigrants that came in far larger droves, like Germans?
Wow, and the Irish also named the white N-word of America like KRAUT in the past. Oh, wow.
Seeing as both have always been close neighbors, anti-Irish views have existed in some form since the medieval age. The supposed barbarity of the Irish was even an excuse by the Catholic Church to invade the island.
Yeah, I mean, that has always been the thing. For example, England was invaded by the Roman Empire, while Ireland really wasn't. So that's where you can start to see the difference on the English system and the Irish system, and how they probably viewed Ireland for not being like
in the
them.
Topographia Hibernica, written by Gerald of Wales in the 12th century, the view of the Irish wasn't too fond.
Anti-Catholicism, yeah.
People,
I mean, weren't people like not wanted to vote for John F. Kennedy because he was like Catholic? And I think he was like the first Catholic president of the United States. In fact, the U.S., I think, has only had 2 Catholic presidents, Joe Biden and John F. Kennedy. Yeah, probably started around the Protestant Reformation.
On the produce of their cattle only. This people, then, is truly barbarous, being not only barbarous in their dress, but suffering their hair and beards to grow enormously
Let's make some good damn crepes.
Just like the modern fashion recently introduced. Indeed, all their habits are barbarisms.
Wow.
For much of the Middle Ages, the Irish were not seen as civilized. The British perception of Ireland came to view the Irish as a sinful bunch of savages who never really adapted to be pious like the rest of Europe. Many military incursions into Ireland were almost like a medieval version of white man's burden. The Irish didn't know what was good for them, and to rule over them was really for their best interest. They weren't truly Catholic, and the British had to show them the way. Centuries later, in an odd bit of irony, this resentment for the Irish not being Catholic enough flipped over as the Irish were now resented for being Catholic at all. When Henry VIII split Britain from the Church, the British expected the Irish would follow suit and abandon the Pope. Well, this didn't happen, and during a time when entire wars were fought between Catholics and Protestants, this wasn't something the British would just shake off. Repeated attempts to convert the Irish to Protestantism all failed. The stubbornness to not see the true light of Protestantism fostered a deep resentment towards the Irish. It manifested itself in many forms to explain why the Irish were so daft and uneducated to follow the Catholic Church and not Protestants. This religious origin slowly evolved as the 19th century came about. The Enlightenment brought on scientific theory, and with that, the pseudoscience of racialism as well. The Irish were viewed as violent, belligerent, and downright stupid, entirely different from the sophistication of the Anglo-Saxon race. So the only...
Which is funny, because now when you think about Ireland, it's really, per capita at least, a wealthy place, at least wealthier compared to now the UK.
Was that the Irish were a different race entirely. And in many circles, this perception stuck. Even though the Irish had pale skin and light hair, they were seen as white apes.
People think I'm Chinese when I speak Korean. Wow.
Much of this bigotry really only stayed in Ireland until the potato famine. The famine created a situation where millions of Irish fled, many moving to England and settling the cities as poor immigrants.
Yeah.
This really didn't help the perception of them as impoverished and criminal, so by the 19th century, anti-Irish views began to flare up once again. Even though America likes to see itself as independent, it still gets influenced from time to time by Britain, and this Irish hatred was no different. In the 1840s and 50s, there was a dramatic explosion of Irish immigrants into the United States. Many were extremely poor and lived in pretty much squalor. They did the jobs nobody else really wanted, like building canals.
Sounds
familiar. In fact, in many
familiar.
parts, entire section of building jobs were only Irishmen. Were the Irish universally hated? No. Yet, at the time, the Irish were not viewed as an equal to the average American, or even to the new immigrants.
And that's
of
why you can see a lot of
Germans and
KRAUT
Poles.
Irish
The
families.
stereotype of them as a violent and sinful people followed them across the sea. So even if this downright racism against them wasn't as prominent as we imagine, there was still a common disgust with the Irishmen, especially with their interactions with Black Americans.
Okay.
Because of their poor status,
That's
the
interesting.
Irish lived in the same poor neighborhoods as blacks in American cities. They weren't entirely friendly with each other, but compared to the relationship between whites and blacks at the time, it seemed downright
it was
friendly.
a lot better. Yeah.
Irish and blacks in the same clubs, streets, even interracial relationships. To white Americans, this gave the Irish the association of being dirty. In fact, many simply called the Irish...
How does a Mexican from Mexico feel about Mexican immigration into the U.S.? Well, first of all, I have to say that it's decreasing, that there's less and less migrants moving to the U.S. because Mexico is improving as a country. I think it should be regulated at the end of the day because you can't have like open borders, literally. But I think the U.S., like other Western nations, have benefited from migrants and still get some benefit from migrants. So I think it's good for the U.S. to have some immigration from Mexico, although not from like bad people or really uneducated people or I don't know. Yeah, young people, yeah.
White. To some Americans, blacks were actually higher
there
on
we
the
go.
hierarchy than the Irish. To paraphrase one observer of the time,
Yeah, we need more Mexicans in
black families
Canada.
at least kept their homes
You come
clean.
to Quebec, speak
Americans,
French,
not
please.
only
Yeah.
were the Irish poor and criminal, but worst of all,
Yeah,
they were
definitely.
Catholic. In early 19th century America, many considered Catholicism dangerous to the American experiment, entirely foreign. To people whose leader of their church lived in their same town, the idea that these immigrants followed a church thousands of miles away in Italy was entirely
In
alien.
Italy.
It was anti-American and horrific. Conspiracies became quite popular about how the Irish would bring down the American way of life. The Pope and his bishops were preparing to invade the United States and form a new Vatican in Cincinnati.
Oh,
now,
God.
this wasn't a view everybody had, but it was prominent enough to
It
be
was
noteworthy.
prominent, yeah.
If the
It
Irishman
was
was
noteworthy.
stereotyped as the violent, savage Catholic that he was, then how did the Irish ever get rid of that perception of them in the United States? First was the Civil War. When the war began, thousands of Irishmen took up the Union cause against the rebels. To Northerners, the hatred of the rebels and fighting alongside the Irish stripped away the perception that these people...
But is it a subject in Mexico? Like, do some Mexicans think it's bad that people are leaving? Not really, no. It's really not a subject in Mexico. Would love to go to Mexico, but not sure where is a good place. I mean, Cancun is always like a good place to start. It's very English friendly. It's very safe. The beaches are great. It's a little expensive, but I think it's pretty nice. Mexico reminds me of Italy. Relatively prosperous cities, but a lot of organized crime in the south. Oh yeah, totally.
People were somehow un-American.
Mexico is very
After the
similar
war,
to Italy.
Anti-Irish
Yeah.
sentiment still existed in many places, but not to the extent it was before the war. The stereotype still persisted in the American mind of the Irishman as an irresponsible, sinful people. So there became a collective effort by Irish-American leaders, even prominent bishops.
Would you ever visit Seoul? I would love to visit Seoul. In fact, one of my cousins was recently in South Korea and she loved it. She told me it was great and I really want to
change the
visit Korea
stereotype
or
of the
Seoul.
Irish as a drunkard to a responsible, pious American. The Irish themselves began to change their image, arguing that Catholicism was not anti-American, but was just as moral as Protestantism.
Yeah.
Catholic schools taught basic morals while still being American. While anti-Catholic forces like the KKK were at their height by the turn of the 20th century, this was only the last vestige before Catholicism was never really seen as anti-American again. Irish American leaders began influencing elections of leaders in major cities.
People say that the tourist cities of the northern Yucatan are more English than Miami. Yeah, they are. I mean, Miami is very, very Spanish. They do speak a lot of Spanish. So yeah, I would say part of it. I love the Irish culture. Same.
Due to decades of
I love Irish beer.
Blue-collar jobs, the Irish were able to vote in Irish-friendly politicians. Those politicians recruited new policemen, many of which were prominently Irish. This began the stereotype of the Irish cop. While still a stereotype, it was one for the better. In a few decades, the Irish went from criminal drunkards to being slowly perceived as law-abiding proud Americans.
Okay.
And by being law-abiding proud Americans, in many ways that meant going against the next perceived foreigner. To really wrap this up, the best way that the Irish eventually fit into the idea as a part of America was that another immigrant
Irish mythology is super underrated,
at the bottom of the totem pole. So today, the plight of the Irishman in America is really just a distant memory. In a century and a half, a stereotype about a people who would bring about the death of the country now became a light-hearted celebration where all Americans pretend that they're not American. This is Cody of Knowledge Hub.
Hey, that was pretty nice. So yeah, the Irish basically started as like really hated because they were Catholic. I think that was like the biggest reason, because they were Catholic. But there is truth that they were also hated because they were like a little different, right? Because of the lack of knowledge, yeah. Yo, how you doing? Hello, Thomas. Good to see you, my man. Fun fact, they're a really popular Quebec dish, so popular that it is part of the culture, that is named Chinese pie, with the origin trying to Quebec while going to Maine. Wow. Will you watch real life lore or a video on the aerials? Yeah, let's end with a real life lore video. I still don't get the difference between Protestant and Catholics. There is no difference. I mean, they are all like pretty similar, you know? I think they're all the same. So, I'm gonna ask you guys for a choice. So what do you guys want to watch? We could watch the one on Namibia, the one on Turkey and Syria, the one on the coastline of Britain, or like NATO's biggest weakness, or any of these that we haven't watched, really. The former Pope. Ariel C is depressing. Which one is the Ariel C? Oh, why Russia is destroying the fourth biggest lake? Is that the one? Syria. Okay, Syria. The former Pope. Shepherd pie is delicious. North Sentinel Islands. Okay, so we're having a bunch of different we're having a bunch of different options. Let's do Turkey or North Sentinel Island. War Graphics, great channel. Maybe we can watch him next time. Syria? Okay, let's do Syria. I think more people want Syria, yeah. Anything from her, 10 out of 10. Island, Turkey. We have 3 people wanting Turkey. Fine. I think Turkey won. Sorry, I know you wanted to watch the Sentinel Island, but I think most people want Turkey. Kurdish, yeah. Let's watch it. Fuck it.
On the 13th of November, 2022,
Turkey,
a bomb exploded in a crowded shopping area of Istanbul, the largest city in Turkey. 6 Turkish civilians were killed in the blast, and more than 80 others were wounded. And within 24 hours of the attack, the Turkish government unilaterally blamed the Kurdish separatist groups operating in Turkey and Syria, known as the PKK and SDF, despite each of their claims of having nothing to do with it. And within a week of the attack, Turkish jets and artillery systems began bombing PKK and SDF positions across northern Syria and Iraq in a campaign over pride. reprisals. The
What
Turkish
did Iraq
president
have to do
Tayyip
with
Recep
anything?
Erdogan then went another step even further and insisted that these aerial and artillery attacks on Kurdish positions in Iraq and Syria were only the beginning. On the
Only the
21st of
beginning.
November, he threatened
Wait,
to
hold up. Like, is this for real? Like, are they actually wanting to invade Syria? That's insane. Oh,
order a full-scale ground invasion into northern Syria against the Kurds there in order to establish what he and his supporters have long been calling for. A 30-kilometer deep safe zone just across the Turkish border into Syrian territory that would be occupied and policed by the Turkish army. As all eyes in the West and NATO have been focused on the war in Ukraine, the decade-long brutal civil war in Syria continues. And with this upcoming invasion into the country from Turkey looming, the conflict appears to be entering a new and potentially even more dangerous phase than before that could see the
Syria's
United
just
States
like
having to refocus
the
its
land, not the
attention
government.
back on the
Yeah.
troubled country once
I don't know
again.
much about
And in
it.
order
Yeah.
to understand why
A little
Turkey is
worrying.
considering this invasion into Syria now and
I don't
the
know
potential
much about this.
consequences it will have on the war, you have to understand a few basic geopolitical and demographic realities around the area that are pushing them into it first. Let's begin with the fact that Turkey isn't entirely an ethnically homogenous nation-state in the same way that other countries are, like France, Japan, or Germany. When you look at an ethnic map of the country, you will notice that the Turks make up a majority nearly everywhere except for the entire southeastern corner, which
I
is
got a friend that
demographically
fights with the
dominated
Kurds.
instead by
Wow.
the Kurds, an Iranian ethnic group who speak their own separate language that by far make up the largest ethnic and linguistic minority in Turkey. There are around 15 million of them who live within Turkey today, and that means they make up around a fifth of the entire country's population.
that's
but
huge.
the Kurds don't just exist in the southeastern corner
In
of
Iraq
Turkey.
and Syria.
It's estimated that there's anywhere between 30 and 45 million Kurds who exist throughout a large area that spans across the borders of southeastern Turkey, northeastern Syria, northern Iraq, and western Iran. And because these tens of millions of Kurds are divided between the borders
I
of
used to have
these
a
four
Kurdish
separate
best friend.
countries, the Kurds represent
I don't really
one of the
like Erdogan.
largest
Yeah, me
nations of
neither.
people in the world without a state of their own. And that means that from time to time,
CIB,
there have been nationalist calls
DIB. I don't
within
know
the
what that
Kurdish
is.
area here to create that
Oh,
state
the
that
page?
would hypothetically be called Kurdistan. However, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran have
Of
all
course.
brutally repressed these Kurdish calls for statehood over various different times over the past century for the very simple fact that if any one group of Turkish, Syrian, Iraqi, or Iranian Kurds ever managed to achieve independence or autonomy,
The
it could
other,
end up
yeah.
causing a cascading domino effect that would unite all of the other Kurdish regions into that single state of Kurdistan. If, for example, the Kurds in Syria managed to achieve independence or autonomy from the government of Syria, then
I wonder if it will be rigged. I mean, most things are rigged, honestly. Kurdistan is maybe gonna be a future country. I honestly don't think so. I hope the Kurds get their freedom. I do hope that too. I think it's fair, but unfortunately, I don't think it will
a free
happen.
base of operations for the rest of the Kurds in Turkey, Iraq, and Iran to operate out of and work towards their own independences and the greater goal of Kurdistan, which, in Turkey's case, would result in the loss of basically the entire southeast of the country, along with the millions of people who live there who pay taxes and contribute to the economy. And that is something that for the past century, the Turkish government has found to be completely unacceptable. Turkey
They
has
really
thus
want to
repressed the
avoid
Kurdish
that.
people within their own borders for nearly a century. They weren't even officially classified as being a separate identity from
It would take a lot of bloodshed before that happens against Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. So that's
Turks until
a
1991.
lot of powerful
The words
armies.
Kurds and Kurdistan have previously been banned in any language in the country, and after 1980, the Kurdish language itself was officially outlawed in public and private life as well for the next decade.
Outlawed?
It is still, to this day, illegal in Turkey to use the Kurdish language as a language of
South
instruction in
Ossetia
both
speaks a
public and
Persian
private
language.
schools, and is only allowed to be taught as a subject. As a consequence of this repression, there has long been a degree of activism within the Kurdish areas of southeastern Turkey for increased autonomy from the government or outright independence, backed up by both peaceful protesters and armed guerrilla warfare and terror attacks. The most prominent and violent of the Kurdish separatist forces to emerge in Turkey eventually became the Kurdistan.
Kurds have fought for hundreds of years against many empires and nations. I think they deserve their own nation. I think they deserve it too. I think they really, really do. But I think it's unfortunate because I don't think the global powers really care that much about the Kurds. So that's why they are not going to get their own nation, because Turkey's not going to let them, Iran is not going to let them, Syria and Iraq are not going to let them.
And Workers' Party, better known as the PKK. In 1984, the PKK declared a Kurdish uprising against the Turkish government and started a full-scale insurgency campaign.
Thanks, Britain
and over the
friends.
decades that have followed, the PKK expanded their operations and the fight against the Turkish state into the Kurdish majority areas of Iraq and Syria.
I mean, Toyota war, yeah, look at another Toyota.
40,000 people are believed to have been killed in the fighting and the terror, most of them
Poor
being
truck.
Kurdish civilians. Thus, Turkey has spent decades fighting a brutal campaign to stamp out the PKK and Kurdish separatism from the southeast of the country. Turkey has suffered as much as $450 billion in estimated economic losses over the years fighting against them, and they have frequently launched incursions to attack PKK bases and operations in the Kurdish majority areas
Chad
of
versus
neighboring Iraq
Libya
and
vibes.
Syria. But for the most part, the Arab governments in Iraq and Syria each repressed their Kurdish populations as well, and so they didn't necessarily mind the Turkish incursions into their territories attack
As if there's a version of the Middle East that doesn't end in fighting, yeah.
the PKK. The Syrian and Iraqi governments didn't want an independent Kurdistan to emerge for the same reasons the Turks didn't want one. But everything began to change in the 2010s, when the Syrian government suddenly became no longer capable of repressing their Kurdish population. When Syria imploded into a devastating civil war in 2011, the instability and chaos there proved the perfect opportunity for armed Kurdish groups in the northeast to finally carve out their own autonomous zone of control, separate from the Assad regime based in Damascus. The primary Kurdish faction in Syria eventually became known as the YPG, and later the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. And after they became supported by the United States, they became highly effective in establishing a large swath of de facto control over the Kurdish majority area of northeastern Syria. But Turkey was always going to view the emergence of an autonomous Kurdish area in northern Syria like this as a
danger,
grave threat to their own national security.
The guy's helmet, though. It's interesting because Turkey is also an American ally, so it's interesting what's that going to do.
Turkey's own Kurdish separatist groups like the PKK could, hypothetically, begin using it as a free base of operations to coordinate the insurgency campaign in southeastern Turkey from. And worst of all, if northeast Syria became an independent Kurdish state, it could end up triggering the domino effect of the other Kurdish majority areas in the Middle East achieving independence, which
Syrian
could lead
civil
to the
war, then
eventual
anyone with a
secession
gun
of
in a group
Southeast Turkey.
can become a
Thus,
warlord.
part of the reason that Turkey has invaded northern Syria on multiple occasions already has been precisely to prevent this from ever happening. Currently, the Turkish army and Turkish-backed proxies in Syria already control large swaths of the northern part of the country acquired through previous Turkish invasions and interventions in the Civil War. But what Turkey wants to do now is to greatly expand their zone of control at the expense of the Kurdish forces. The 30-kilometer deep so-called safe zone across the north of the country.
I mean, isn't it a little crazy, bro? Like, why are they able to do it? You know, why can they do it? Why can they do something like this?
Occupied by the Turkish army. If Turkey is successful in establishing this zone, it'll create a deep buffer zone between itself and the Kurdish rebels and regime forces in Syria, and thus deny an easy way for Kurdish separatists and PKK elements to travel back and forth across the border. Turkey claims, in opposition to the United States and the rest of NATO,
in opposition to
SDF
NATO,
in northern Syria and the PKK in southeastern Turkey are both one and the same and share the ultimate objective of establishing a unified state of Kurdistan and destabilizing Turkey. And by pinning the blame of the recent terrorist attack in Istanbul on the PKK and the SDF, Erdogan has gained the casus
oh god, I really don't like Erdogan, man.
belli he needs to carry out the invasion and establish his desired safe zone, which he and his supporters insist will prevent future bombing. His desired safe zone, which he
I have to say, I really like this picture in the background of Ataturk, you know?
He and his supporters insist will
Just
prevent
saying.
future bombings and terrorists from being able to cross the border into Turkey. But there's also another reason why Turkey wants to do all of this.
His
In the aftermath of
hairline,
the
I
Syrian
know,
civil
right?
war,
Like, bro,
more than
just go
3.6
bold.
million, mostly Arab Syrians, have fled the country into Turkey as refugees, which
He'll probably lose the next election, true. He looks like a Disney grandpa. I hope he loses the next
represents
election.
the largest demographic shift in Turkey's history since the Greek and Turkish population transfers of the 1920s. The arrival of so many millions of Syrians into
Yeah,
Turkey
this
was
is also
initially
true.
welcomed by the government, but it has since become an issue of extreme political polarization. Many Turkish nationalists have long been calling for the Syrian
Okay, interesting fact. Masha Amini was Kurdish. I didn't knew that.
refugees to be deported from the country, and their plight has not been helped by the severe worsening of the Turkish economy. The inflation rate in Turkey is now over 85% and the highest it's been since the 1990s.
Jesus.
And just a few years ago in 2019, the euro was still worth 6 Turkish lira. And now it's worth roughly 20. And ahead of the Turkish presidential election coming up in June, nationalist parties in Turkey have begun to scapegoat the Syrian refugees for causing the economic crisis. And public opinion has begun to sharply shift against them. President Erdogan himself said back in May that he would voluntarily relocate 1 million of the refugees back to Syria. But some of his political opponents...
What? Bro, he would relocate 1 million refugees. That's insane. 2 seconds. Oh, there's
Opponents in the upcoming election have insisted on going even further, like this guy who says that he will deport all 3.6 million of them back to Syria within 2 years of him assuming office. Or this guy who said that he'll do it within 1 year. Nearly every mainstream political party in Turkey is currently advocating for the deportation of Syrian refugees back to Syria. But sending millions...
Yeah, even Trump wouldn't have said that. Yeah. My YouTube getting hacked? What? Really?
Of people
That
back to a
sucks.
chaotic, war-torn country that they don't feel safe going back to is obviously a recipe for disaster. And that's why the Turkish government's plan is to simply resettle them all instead into the proposed 30-kilometer wide safe zone that is the prime objective of the next invasion. But resettling millions of mostly Arab refugees within this zone will not only ease the societal pressures and anti-refugee
But a
sentiment within
demographic
Turkey, it will also
pressure, yeah.
heavily dilute the Kurdish population in northern Syria with millions of Arabs, and thus weaken the Kurds' demographic hold in the area across the border from the...
Oh, what's everyone's favorite ice cream flavor? I have to go for vanilla. Or no, cookies. Yeah. In Mexico, we have this thing that's called cookies and cream. I don't know if you guys have it elsewhere, but it's basically vanilla with like chocolate chip cookies, and it's delicious. Napolitan, that's also nice. Once again, what can go wrong? Jesus Christ, this is a Machiavellian plan. This is insane.
the Kurdish majority areas in Turkey. The establishment of the so-called safe zone will also strengthen Turkey's grip
Vanilla
in
and
Syria
strawberry,
and
yes.
ensure them a seat at the
Pistachio, that's
negotiating
interesting.
table for whenever the Syrian civil war finally comes to a conclusion.
Black sesame,
Now,
I have
President
tried
Erdogan
that,
has
it's
used
good.
the Turkish military to invade and intervene in Syria multiple times in the recent past already, and they've all been steadily building up to this greater goal of the continuous so-called safe zone. They have also always happened to coincide with important
Now that you guys told me about the hairline, I can't unsee it, you know? I can't unsee
elections
it.
within Turkey itself, or immediately after Erdogan's own approval ratings have taken a dive. Just look at this chart. Each of the four
Damn,
previous Turkish
that's
invasions
bad.
into Syria resulted in sharp upticks in Erdogan's approval ratings as the Turkish army saw victories on the battlefield. And now Erdogan is facing what is potentially his greatest
Salted
political
caramel?
challenge yet.
I don't think I have
With the
tried
struggling
that.
currency and sky-high inflation, Erdogan's approval rating within Turkey is currently barely hovering over 40%, and he stands to face a very possible defeat in his upcoming election in June. Consequently, he almost certainly believes that another decisive military victory in Syria against the Kurdish factions there that will expand the so-called Turkish safe zone will bump up his electoral chances in June and enable him to continue hanging on to the presidency. But one of the biggest problems for Erdogan and Turkey's proposed invasion into Syria is that it will come into direct conflict with one of Turkey's greatest supposed allies, the United States.
Yeah.
Washington's primary interest in the Syrian civil war has always been countering the rise of ISIS.
Bro is getting hacked and we are discussing ice cream. Yeah, that's true though. We're sorry about that, Tarku.
As best as it can. which shocked the world in 2014 when it suddenly seized control over nearly a third of Syria in a blitzkrieg-style offensive.
Really?
The United States then began a targeted bombing campaign of ISIS targets from the air, while they began to heavily supply the Kurdish factions in the SDF in northeast Syria with weapons and advisors to simultaneously fight against ISIS on the ground. The strategy largely worked out, and ISIS began to crumble and lost most of their ground by 2017. But the United States was unprepared for how badly this strategy was going to blow back and alienate one of their other allies, Turkey. Turkish and American interests in Syria began to radically diverge because Turkey insists that the SDF and the PKK are essentially the exact same organization. And so, according to them, that meant that American weapons and training for the SDF would eventually be used by the PKK against the Turkish government and their ongoing insurgency in southeast Turkey.
Yeah, the least crazy conflict in the Middle East. Didn't Erdogan try that in Istanbul a few years ago? Like the results will vote again. Yeah, I think so.
And conversely, the US recognizes the PKK as a terrorist organization just like Turkey does, but they insist that the SDF is a truly separate organization that is strictly dedicated to fighting against ISIS and maintaining its autonomy within Syria. This is why, after Erdogan's announcement in late November that he was planning a ground invasion against the US-allied SDF in Syria, the Biden administration in the United States was quick to condemn it for undermining the fight against ISIS, because it would mean the Kurdish SDF troops would have to largely abandon the fight against ISIS
Camden,
in
how
order
are you
to
doing?
defend themselves from the Turks.
Camden,
but the United States can't really do a lot about the Turkish invasion plan other than offering up harsh words, because Turkey currently holds a lot of geopolitical leverage over NATO and the European
because
Union.
of Russia?
With the enormous all-out Russian invasion of Ukraine, the attention and focus of each have been highly distracted from Syria. Finland and Sweden each apply to finally join the NATO alliance in the face of the war in Ukraine, but their memberships have to be approved by every single other member already in NATO.
And that includes
Turkey has been deliberately stalling on giving out that approval. Turkey is currently demanding that Sweden and Finland each extradite accused PKK members in their countries back to Turkey to stand trial, and that Finland end their ongoing arms embargo on Turkey, which they implemented years ago over concerns that the Turks were using those weapons in Syria against civilian targets. In exchange for meeting these demands, Turkey has agreed to accept their applications into NATO. But with a new Turkish ground invasion into northern Syria looming against...
Hope we will kick Turkey out of NATO. That'd be an interesting take, but I don't think it will happen. Anyone know if Turkey has nukes yet? I don't think they have nukes yet. What did I miss? Oh man, we've watched, honestly, plenty of videos.
The nominally US-allied Kurdish SDF, the United States will most likely not want to do anything to provoke Turkey's wrath any further.
Yeah, of course.
That could lead them to further blocking Sweden and Finland's memberships into NATO, or pushing the Turks even further into the orbit of Moscow. There was already an intense spat back in 2017 when the Turks agreed to purchase the Russian-made S-400 air defense system, which led to economic sanctions being slapped upon Turkey by their own NATO ally, the United States. Thus, it is likely that if and when Turkey does initiate this invasion, the United States will probably choose to abandon their Kurdish allies and throw them under the bus in exchange for getting the Turks on board with letting Sweden and Finland into NATO in order to further counter the Russians in Northern Europe. Turkey is well aware of this complicated geopolitical calculus, and therefore knows that this is their best opportunity to seize what they want in northern Syria. Now, the other big international player in the Syrian civil war besides the United States has historically been the Russians. Initially, Russia and Turkey's geopolitical interests in the civil war clashed because Turkey wanted Assad to step down from power and Russia wanted him to remain in power at all costs. You see, Russia has a vital interest in keeping the Assad regime in power in Syria because it is his regime that grants the Russian Navy their access and lease over the port here at Tartus, the only operational base that the Russian Navy is able to use on the Mediterranean
Yeah, Russia,
Sea.
I mean, bro.
This is critical because it spares Russian warships operating in the Mediterranean the necessity of having to sail back through the narrow NATO-controlled choke points of the Turkish Straits to reach Russia's own ports on the north side of the Black Sea whenever they need replenishments or repairs. Tartus therefore enables the Russian Navy to operate within the Mediterranean independently of Russia's own bases on the
Plus, yeah, Iran also supports the Syrian government, yeah. All sides in this conflict have no heroes, and yeah, I totally agree with that.
Which could always be theoretically bottled up and contained there by NATO closing down the Turkish Straits. Without TARDIS, the Russian Navy would no longer be capable of functioning in the Mediterranean with a base to repair and replenish itself at during a war
that's
with
good.
NATO.
Fuck 'em.
That is why the Russians want to keep Assad in power. If Assad was ever toppled, there would never be any guarantee to the Russians that whatever new regime replaces him would renew their lease to the port at TARDIS. And that could mean their entire Mediterranean strategy against NATO could just always go up in
Maybe
smoke.
the Kurds,
So
maybe,
the Russians
yeah.
began to massively support the Assad regime's forces with airstrikes against rebel factions beginning in 2015, and that eventually led to the regime taking back control over most of the country. Turkey's goals then gradually shifted over time from toppling the Assad regime outright to simply controlling the regions in the north of Syria immediately across from their border.
Yeah, the regions that have like the highest Kurdish population. France also supports the Syrian government. Huh.
And so the Turks and their proxy forces, and the Russians and the regime, were able to somewhat cooperate together against mutual foes like ISIS and the Kurdish separatists. That is why in 2018, the Russians and the regime and the Turks and their proxies in the north agreed on a deal.
Back when Russia was actually able to get some stuff done, yeah. Russia doesn't have a chance against NATO anymore anyway. Yeah, no, yeah, totally.
Where both
They
sides
don't have a
agreed to stop
chance.
attacking each other's positions. But a thorny point in the agreement came in the form of the Idlib governorate, or province. You see, by 2020, Arab rebels remaining within Syria who were opposed to the Assad regime and not under the influence of Turkey had been essentially limited and contained to just this part of this one province, leading to it being dubbed in much of the international
I mean,
media.
just look at that map. Just look at that map. You have Turkey, you have Russia, you have the US allies, you have the Kurdish, you have Islamic rebel forces, and then you have the Syrian government. Jesus Christ, what a mess.
This part of this one province, leading to it being dubbed in much of the international media as Syria's last rebel stronghold. The faction that came to dominate this last of the rebel strongholds in Syria came to be known as H0ser al-Sham, or HTS, a radical fundamentalist jihadi faction still bent on overthrowing the more secular Assad regime and establishing a fundamentalist Sunni Islamic government within.
Wait, what? I don't know who did those borders, but they did a very bad job. Oh wait, who did it?
Syria.
It wasn't like the
Now,
French or the
HTS's
British,
territory
you
in
know.
Idlib
No.
is placed a mere 35 miles away from Hmeimim, the primary air base that the Russian Air Force has used as its base of operations in Syria, and only 75 miles away from the all-important Russian naval base at TARDIS. Naturally, Russia and the Assad regime would prefer to see HTS eliminated and taken over. But there were also around 4 million Syrian civilians who live within HTS-controlled territory. Were the regime to take them all over, it's likely that a lot of those millions would be transformed into refugees and attempt to
flee
flee
Turkey, yeah.
immediately across the border into Turkey. The country where public opposition towards Syrian refugees has recently become extremely high. Absorbing millions of additional refugees from Syria is a politically untenable option for Turkey right now, and that's why the Turks and the Russians both effectively agreed to keep Idlib as a neutral zone outside of both of their control. The Russians wouldn't support regime offensives into Turkish-backed proxy territory or HTS territory that could generate a fresh refugee crisis for Turkey, while the Turks agreed that they would prevent HTS from expanding their territory any further that could put Russian geopolitical interest.
Dude, there's such a mess. I mean, so many sides and so many people involved. No wonder this video is 30 minutes long.
In the Mediterranean in jeopardy. But the Syrian regime's other major international backer, the Iranians, never made any such promises. After the Russians invaded Ukraine in February of 2022 with hundreds of thousands of troops, and soon after began mobilizing hundreds of thousands more after their sharp battlefield losses and heavy casualties, the Russians began pulling troops and equipment out of Syria towards the more important front line in Ukraine. That left a power vacuum in Syria that has been steadily getting replaced by the Iranians. You see, Iran also supports the Assad regime in Syria, but for completely different reasons than the Russians do. Assad himself is an Alawite Shiite Muslim, and his regime has long been friendly to the world's most preeminent Shia Muslim power, Iran. The Alawite Shia make up a minority within Syria at only about 10% of the population, while the Sunnis make up the vast majority at over 74%. But it has been the Shia Alawites who have dominated the Assad regime's government for decades.
There's also, interestingly enough, Christian sites in Syria. That's interesting.
Shia-dominated Iran needs them to remain in power so they can continue reliably transporting weapons and supplies overland via their Shia militia proxies in Iraq.
Okay, sorry guys, let me check what happened to my camera. Okay, I think I'm back. Oh, there we go.
Then through friendly Syrian territory onto their other proxy group Hezbollah in Lebanon, so that Hezbollah can continue fighting against one of Iran's
No, I'm
greatest
gone
enemies.
again. What's going on, dude? Okay, finally. I think it's finally done.
Israel. But it's not just these military objectives and better geopolitical posture
Yeah, I
against
don't
Israel
know.
that Iran
The camera
wants out of Syria.
lags a
They
little
also
bit.
want a rail corridor extending overland across Iraq and Syria towards the Syrian port of Latakia, which, if achieved, would enable the Iranians to export oil and gas supplies more directly to European consumers in the event that Western sanctions are ever dropped or relaxed in the future. And in order to ensure that these objectives are met,
He said
Iran
the I
wants
word.
the friendly Assad regime to remain in power and reestablish control from whatever remains of the mostly
Yeah.
Sunni rebels in order to ensure continued Shiite dominance, and that includes crushing the fundamentalist Sunni faction HTS in Idlib, arguably the final obstacle standing in the way of the Assad regime's total victory in Syria. As hundreds of Russian soldiers and contractors have been pulling out of Syria and getting redeployed to Ukraine, Iran and their various Shiite militias have been sending thousands of highly motivated
I
men
find that
into
funny,
Syria
yeah,
to
deal with
replace
it.
them. And while the Russians were accommodating to the Turks and their interests in Syria, the Iranians most definitely are not, and they want any elements in the country that could become hostile to their own agenda purged from any future
Purged?
government or settlement.
It's a
Iran
joke.
is
It's a big
therefore
joke.
much
All of
bolder
this.
than the Russians were in helping the Assad regime recapture all of its lost territory from the rebels. And they are likely to encourage and even support new regime offensives into Idlib against HTS that could trigger a fresh new migration crisis into Turkey. Erdogan and Turkey are each aware of this potential looming humanitarian catastrophe, and it is likely yet another reason that they want to invade and carve out their 30-kilometer deep safe zone now. When the regime and the Iranians push into the final rebel stronghold in Idlib, millions more Syrians who don't want to live under the Assad regime could suddenly
gonna
transform
flee,
into
yeah.
refugees, and rather than fleeing immediately across the border into Turkey, the Turks could be hoping to instead
Yeah, exactly. Even though there's, I think, still many protests going on in Iran. It seems like all sides suck in this war. Yeah, except for the Kurds, maybe. Yeah, I guess the Kurds have like a valid reason to fight. But everyone else is just so fucked up. And it seems like it's never gonna end. Like with all of this in place, when is it really gonna end? Like, what's gonna be the turning point? Everyone was just pumping
resettle them
people and
across
money.
their proposed so-called safe zone within Syria, with the added benefit from their perspective of further diluting away the demographics of the Kurds there at the same time.
Yeah.
And with Russia unable to oppose the operation, and with the US most likely unwilling to oppose it, and with Erdogan himself desperate for a
Still don't understand why the Americans are in here.
major foreign policy victory to increase his odds of winning re-election in June, all signs are pointing to an eventual massive Turkish invasion bent on expanding their zone of control across northern Syria. But Turkey's increasingly aggressive foreign policy extends well beyond the borders of Syria, and most of it all began back in 2009. In that year, a discovery was
2009,
made
oh.
here in the Eastern Mediterranean that would change
Cyprus.
Turkey's foreign policy and destiny forever. The Israelis discovered a series of enormous offshore natural gas
Oil,
deposits within their
gas.
exclusive economic zone, followed up shortly afterwards by additional huge discoveries within the EEZs of Cyprus and Egypt. But none were ever discovered within the UN-backed internationally recognized EEZ of Turkey, which, because of Greece's thousands of islands in the Aegean and Cyprus, is heavily restricted in size and mostly bottled up to being immediately around Turkey's own coastline. Naturally, Turkey rejects this international consensus on its maritime boundaries and unilaterally insists, based on its own interpretation of international law, that its own maritime boundaries look a lot more like this, a concept that Turkish nationalists refer to as the Blue Homeland.
Wait. How does this make any sense? Look at Cyprus, dude. So small, I mean, what? How? Why?
And which could, potentially, include the same kinds of rich natural gas deposits that have already been found in the waters of Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt. But But nobody else in the world ever recognized Turkey's ambitious maritime claims here until suddenly in 2019, the Tripoli-based government in Libya signed a deal with the Turks that established the boundaries of their mutual maritime borders to look like this. That deal essentially confirmed the Tripoli-based government's recognition of Turkey's maritime claims, which of course meant that it ignored the usual boundary rules established for maritime zones by the United Nations. It also meant that the proposed Turkish and Libyan maritime zones each cut into the UN-recognized boundaries of Greece and Egypt, which put them both into a coalition against Turkey. Now, at the same time, just like Syria, Libya was wrapped up in the midst of a devastating and chaotic civil war.
Yeah, there are some people in Turkey who want to conquer those Greek islands and believe those islands are Turkish.
Between two rival governments, one based in Tripoli and the other based in Tobruk. Within months of signing the maritime pact with the Tripoli-based government, the Turkish military began to funnel troops, mercenaries recruited from their proxies in Syria, intelligence operatives, air support, and naval assets to them in order to help fight against the Tobruk-based government in the war. If the Turks helped the Tripoli-based government win the war, they would secure Libya's recognition of their ambitious maritime claims in the eastern Mediterranean. But just as in Syria, they ended up falling on the other side as the Russians, who began to heavily support and back up the rival Tobruk-based government. The civil war in Libya thus descended into one of the most devastating and most geopolitically important proxy conflicts of the 21st century, with an unexpected list of countries supporting opposing sides, as Turkey and their Syrian mercenaries, along with Qatar, Iran.
I mean, all proxy conflicts are just so dumb. Like, look, Turkey, Iran, Qatar. I mean, my God.
On Italy, the UK, and United States all backed up the Tripoli-based government, while the Syrian Assad regime, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Russia, France, Greece, and Israel all backed up the Tobruk-based government. Many countries who are nominally allies in other theaters found themselves as enemies backing opposing sides in the Libyan civil war. And even though a ceasefire agreement was technically signed that ended the war more than 2 years ago now, near the end of 2020, nationwide elections that were previously agreed upon have been delayed on multiple occasions and have still yet to actually ever take place.
How random is that? Yeah, you got like Israel and Saudi Arabia and in like the same side. That's insane though. France strong again.
And that threatens to potentially reignite the war and bring all of the international powers like Turkey back in who want to intervene. The civil war in Libya is directly connected to Turkey's greater geopolitical ambitions and the oil and gas politics of the Middle East and the Eastern Mediterranean. But unfortunately, if I made an in-depth video covering all the details of a recent major war like this, the disturbing, violent, and controversial details of discussing the necessary context and events would cause the video to become demonetized and age-restricted, which I completely understand and frankly agree with. But it ultimately means that YouTube's algorithm wouldn't promote the video to you, and there's simply no way that you would ever see it here. And that's why instead, I created yet another full-length companion video to this one in my ongoing Modern Conflict series that's about the same length as this video that covers the entire course and explanation into the civil war in Libya and uploaded it directly to Nebula, which, as you've probably heard by now, is home to
Arab Spring, it all, I mean, the Arab Spring, man, Jesus Christ. I mean, what a huge mess of multiple countries. An endless war. We have this DW documentary, An Endless War. Iran, Israel, and the United States. Oh, God. My brain is melting, too. Yeah. I need just, like, some time to take it in. Holy shit. I mean, a lot has been going on then recently. But I didn't know that Turkey was about to invade Syria or, like, had many reasons to invade Syria. But I guess that's a thing. I guess that's happening. What do you guys think? Yeah, it was always make a strange partnership. Yeah, wars always make strange partnerships. Yeah. It was like the Congo Wars or the Angolan Civil War, right? Like a lot of those also had like very strange partnerships, right? By the way, what's going on in Brazil? Brazil also had like this huge like January 6th intervention when a bunch of Bolsonaro right-wing supporters got into the Brazilian Congress and like the Brazilian I don't know, like courts, and like fortunately nobody was there because I think it was like a Sunday and people just weren't gonna work on Sunday and nobody was there, nobody was hurt, I think, from what I've heard, but still pretty crazy, huh? Germany and Brazil, yeah, Germany. Can we finish with some memes maybe? Yeah, if there's any video or any memes, we can end it. I'm definitely, you know, have some stuff to do, but let's watch something else. Estonia ball animations. Let's watch some memes. There we go. Estonia ball animations. Let's watch this last one. Oh, I think I've watched some of these. I think I've watched this one.
Coming out here to pick up a cupcake. My name is.
Yeah, so this is basically turkey.mp4, and it's basically like Turkey summarized. You'll see, you'll see.
Out here to pick up a cupcake. My name is. Hello. Somebody come get this, man. Come on now. Come on, get this, man. I just woke up.
Roman Empire, the Byzantines. Oh. Oh my god. Oh my god, that's embarrassing, dude. Oh. Yo. I'm so sorry. I mean, I apologize. Sometimes I'm just somewhere else. But yeah, now we can finally see the video that even it's very short. It lasts like a minute. Yeah, goofy noises. Yeah. I can't imagine. Yeah. I don't think what were you guys thinking? Like, what is this guy listening to? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Now please we can watch the video. Oh god.
Coming out here to pick up a cupcake. My name is. Hello. Somebody come get this, man. Come on now. Come on, get this, man. I just woke up.
Roman Empire, Byzantines. Like what, the Seljuk Turks? Mongol Empire. Ottomans, I think.
Hey, bro, you got a phone call.
Do you have Instagram?
You already know.
Yeah, the real life lore really got to me, yeah.
Huh? Oh, hey, bro, you got a phone. Okay, here I come.
Turkey and Greece, yeah.
No. Did you know that you have... Huh?
I know, yeah, that's an accurate representation of Turk and the Turkish history. That was funny though. I really enjoyed that one. And I've seen this before, but I haven't seen this one about France 5 days ago. So let's see it. I think it's gonna be interesting.
Oh my god, what the
My brain.
H0ser.
My brain, it is so accurate, right? But my brain is just, listen, I'm a little tired. My brain hurts. My heart hurts. That real life lore video was just so confusing. Like, so, I mean, such a stupid war for such stupid reasons. But here we are at the end of the day, right? One more. Let's do one more. Yeah. Let's do he has one on Estonia. Let's see which one is good, man. Let's see the one about Estonia. Sure, why not?
Hello, and what? Here I come.
Whoa, 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 whoa,
Huh?
Did you know that you have...
Teutonic Order and then Russia. Poland, Lithuania.
This is a certain...
And then Russia just comes in.
This is a...
Soviets, yeah. Yeah, it's a foreign power. Yeah, well, fun fact: the Teutonic Order still exists today. That was a fun fact, man. I had the Teutonic Order still exists today. Wow. Well, I had really no idea. Anyways, guys, Emmanuel Macron. I'll have to see you later. Please go and do stuff that will make Emmanuel Macron proud. And I'll see you on the next stream. Yeah, wait. I want to know where does the Teutonic Order exist. And now let's do face cam. Boom. I want to know. That's a fun fact, though. But yeah, if you guys want to start, it's sad because we are 12 people right now, but it's just so late. I have some stuff to do. How many weeks until next stream? Hopefully just 1 week or a few days, hopefully, but I can't promise. I had to get my old computer because my new one, for whatever reason, can't stream. So, you know, it's just really sad. In your mama. I think they are headquartered in Vienna. I'm definitely going to do more research on that. But I definitely want to know. But anyways, guys, see y'all later.